Invitation to English 1, New Edition. Prose and Poetry. Approved by the Council of Higher Secondary Education, Odisha Bhubaneswar for Plus 2 examination. Published by Odisha State Bureau of Textbook Preparation and Production, Pustak, Bhavan, Bhubaneswar. Editors. Prof. Gangadhar Mishra Drive, Kamla Prasad Mohapatra Drive, Rajat Kumar Mohapatra Drive, SMT, Sanghamitra Khuntia Drive, Dhirendra Kumar Mahanti. Reviewers. Dr. Bhagavat Nath. Dr. Sachidananda Tripathi Major Debasis Das. Dr. SMT. Sumitra Mishra. Published by the Odisha State Bureau of Textbook Preparation and Production, Pustak, Bhavan, Bhubaneswar, Odisha, India. First edition, 2012 over 10000 copies reprint, 2013 over 10000 copies reprint, 2014 80,000 copies reprint, 2015 over 135,000 copies reprint, 2016 over 10000 copies. Publication number 103 ISBN 8180052777X. Copyright reserved by the Odisha State Bureau of Textbook Preparation and Production, Bhubaneswar. No part of this publication may be reproduced in any form without the prior written permission of the publisher. Typesetting, Sai DTP Center, Bhubaneswar. Printed at M.S. Sri Satyanarayan Press, CTC. Price, Rs. 58, Rs. 58 only. Preface. Invitation to English I, New Edition, is an anthology of prose and poetry texts meant for intensive study. It has been designed for formal academic learning at the higher secondary level with a view to developing LSRW, listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills about content material. The level of language learning embedded in the text supports proficiency in academic areas and is essential for the students to achieve academic excellence. This textbook does not limit language acquisition to the understanding of content area vocabulary only. It is designed to inculcate skills such as comparing, classifying, synthesizing, evaluating, and inferring. As new ideas, concepts, and language are presented to the students at the same time, a great deal of initiative is demanded from the teachers to facilitate learning in the class. Students can also study the texts independently if they have already acquired minimum basic interpersonal communicative skills. For convenience of study, each instructional material has been developed with the configuration of interlinked units, and each unit comprises the following items. Warm up the text. Glossary. Think it out. Post-reading activities. Warm-up activities are designed to initiate the students into each unit of the lesson. The teachers should impart cultural information, if any, at this point, so that the students shall feel familiar with the text. While checking the students' comprehension of the text, the teachers shall not put any question directly to a particular student but target a group of 3 to 4 students in order to encourage group activity, as students' response is always better if they try for an answer in a group. Glossary provided at the end of each unit does not simply provide dictionary meanings of words but the meanings in their context. At the end of the instructional material, in order to maximize the benefits of post-reading activities, thematic appreciation tests, doing with words, and behold the stars have been incorporated. Although the teachers shall have the advantage in a small classroom for dealing with the texts, they can never feel uncomfortable in large classrooms. They can use units of instructional material to prepare slides for PowerPoint presentations (PPT) for computer-aided language learning. It is hoped that this textbook will facilitate necessary language skills and will be studied with pleasure and profit. Editors. Forward. The Council of Higher Secondary Education, Odisha has restructured the syllabus in compulsory English for arts, science, commerce and vocational streams for Plus 2 examinations. Accordingly, the new edition of Invitation to English I with new course contents for intensive study has been prepared by a board of editors and reviewers selected by the CHSE. It is hoped that this textbook will serve its purpose. On this occasion, I acknowledge my gratefulness to all the authors and publishers for incorporating their texts in this edition of the book. I record my gratitude to the Department of Higher Education, Gov. of Odisha for allowing the Bureau to publish this textbook. I thank the CHSE, Odisha for their cooperation in the preparation and production of the same. My thanks are due to the editors and reviewers for the pains they have taken in preparing this book within a short span of time. Finally, I extend my thanks to the officers and staff of the Bureau for their wholehearted support in bringing out this book. We welcome any suggestion from students, teachers, and other stakeholders for improvement of this textbook. Dr. Geetika Patnaik, Director, Odisha State Bureau of Textbook. Preparation and Production, Pustak, Bhavan, Bhubaneswar. Prose. 1. Standing Up for Yourself, Yevgeny Yevtushenko, 6-14. 2. The Legend Behind a Legend, Hariharan Balakrishnan, 15-26. 3. The Golden Touch, Nathaniel Hawthorne, 27-34. 4. In London in -4's Lewis Fisher, 35-45. 5. The Cancer Fight, From Hiroshima to Houston, Ritsuko Komaki, 46-53. 6. My Greatest Olympic Prize, Jesse Owens, 54-61. 7. On Examinations, Winston S. Churchill, 62-71. 8. The Portrait of a Lady, Khushwant Singh, 72-80. 9. The Magic of Teamwork, Sam Pitroda, 81-92. 10. Development of Polio Vaccines, Bonnie A. M. Oconk, 93-104 and Linda Morgenstern. Poetry. 1. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, Robert Frost, 105-107. 2. Oft, in the Stilly Night, Thomas Moore, 108-110. 3. The Inchcape Rock, Robert Southey, 111-116. 4. To My True Friend Elizabeth Pinard, 117-119. 5. Fishing Gopa Ranjan Mishra, 120-123. 6. Daffodils William Wordsworth, 124-127. 7. The Ballad of Father Gilligan William Butler Yeats, 128-132. 8. A Psalm of Life H. W. Longfellow, 133-137. 9. Television Roald Dahl, 137-140. 10. Money Madness D.H. Lawrence, 141-144. 11. Syllabus for Higher Secondary Education in English, 145-151 content. Standing Up for Yourself. Yevgeny Yevtushenko. Introducing the author. Yevgeny Alexandrovich Yevtushenko, 1933, is a Russian poet, novelist, essayist, dramatist, screenwriter, actor, editor, and a director of films. Unit I. Warm up. Have you ever come across a child deserted by parents? How does she grow up? Who looks after her education? If you have not come across such an urchin in real life, see the harrowing experiences of growing up in the movie Slumdog Millionaire 2008, directed by Danny Boyle, and co-directed in India by Loveleen Tondon. It is an adaptation of the novel Q&A 2005 by Indian author and diplomat Vikas Swaroop. Read the following unit of the text and note how a Russian child has been brought up in the streets. The text. In 41, I was living alone in an empty flat in a quiet Moscow street. My parents were divorced and my father was somewhere in Kazakhstan with his new wife and their 2 children. I seldom received letters from him. My mother was at the front. She had given up her work as a geologist to become a singer and was giving concerts for the troops. My education was left to the street. The street taught me to swear, smoke, speak elegantly through my teeth, and to keep my fists at the ready, a habit which I have to this day. The street taught me not to be afraid of anything or anyone. This is another habit I have. kept. I realized that what mattered in the struggle for life was to overcome my fear of those who were stronger. Glossary. Front place where two armies are fighting in a war. Concert musical entertainment, usually given in a public ball, elegantly showing a good sense of style. Think it out. 1. Is the narrator a child or an adult narrating his childhood experiences? 2. Does the narrator have happy experiences in his childhood? Why not? 3. What was his relationship with his father? 4. How did his mother spend her time? 5. What does my education was left to the street mean here? 6. What were the two habits that remained with him all his life? 7. What, in your opinion, was the best lesson that the street taught to the narrator? Unit 2. Warm up. Do you think the narrator was scared of someone in particular? Read the following unit of the text and find out the reasons that made every boy scared of Red. The text. The ruler of our street was a boy of about 16 who was nicknamed Red. Red was big and broad-shouldered beyond his ears. Red walked masterfully up and down our street, legs wide and with a slightly rolling gait, like a seaman on his deck. From under his cap, its peak always at the back of his head, his forelock tumbled down in a fiery cascade, and, out of his round, pock-marked face, green eyes, like a cat's, sparkled with scorn for everything and everyone. 2 or 3 lieutenants in peaked caps back to front like Reds, tripped at his heels. Red could stop any boy and say impressively the one word money. His lieutenants would turn out the boy's pockets, and if he resisted, they beat him up hard. Everyone was afraid of Red. So was I. I knew he carried a heavy metal knuckle duster in his pocket. Glossary. Masterfully not caring for others, rolling a side-to-side movement, gait, manner of walking, deck the flow of a ship, tripped, walked with quick light steps. Knuckle duster, metal covering for the knuckles, for attack or defense. Think it out. 1. What made Red look older than he really was? 2. How did he roam in the streets? 3. How did he dress himself? 4. Did he intentionally dress and walk in the manner described? 5. Why did his lieutenants also wear their caps back to front? 6. What pet animal comes to your mind when you read the expression tripped at his heels? 7. What was his way of forcing money out of other boys? 8. How did he rule the street? 9. Was the narrator afraid of Red? Quote the sentence from the text in support of your answer. Unit 3. Warm up. Does the narrator have an encounter with Red? How many times did he come across Red? What was the outcome of his encounters with Red? Read the following unit of the text to find out the answers. The text. I wanted to conquer my fear of Red. So I wrote a poem about him. This was my first piece of journalism in verse. By the next day, the whole street knew it by heart and exulted with triumphant hatred. One morning on my way to school, I suddenly came upon Red and his lieutenants. His eyes seemed to bore through me. Ah, the poet, he drawled, smiling crookedly. So you write verses. Do they rhyme? Red's hand darted into his pocket and came out armed with its knuckle duster. It flashed like lightning and struck my head. I fell down streaming with blood and lost consciousness. This was my first remuneration as a poet. I spent several days in bed. When I went out, with my head still bandaged, I again saw Red. I struggled with myself but lost and took to my heels. At home, I rolled on my bed, biting my pillow and pounding it in shame and impotent fury at my cowardice. I made up my mind to vanquish it at whatever cost. Glossary. Exulted showed great joy and excitement, triumphant showing great joy or satisfaction. Bore through to stare in a way that makes somebody feel uncomfortable, drawl to say something slowly with longer vowel sounds, impotent fury, futile anger. Vanquish, defeat, completely. Think it out. 1. What was the first thing the narrator did to overcome his fear of Red? 2. How did the people in the street respond to the poem? 3. Explain the expression triumphant hatred. 4. How did Red sneer the narrator? 5. What was the result of his first encounter with Red? 6. This was my first remuneration as a poet. Was the narrator happy with his reward as a poet? 7. What was a more difficult situation for the narrator, to be injured by Red or to overcome his fear of Red when he saw Red after his injury? 8. What was the result of his second encounter with Red? Unit IV. Warm up. Fear of Red, or his cowardice, which was more important for the narrator to deal with? What method did the speaker choose to deal with his fear? Did he succeed in his attempt to conquer fear? Read the following unit of the text and for the answers. The text. I went into training with parallel bars and weights. After every session, I would feel my muscles, they were getting bigger, but slowly. Then I remembered something I had read in a book about a miraculous Japanese method of wrestling which gave an advantage to the weak over the strong. I exchanged a week's ration card for a textbook on jiu-jitsu. For 3 weeks, I stayed at home practicing with 2 other boys. Then I went out. Red was sitting on the lawn in our yard playing one-tet-un with his lieutenants. He was absorbed in the game. Fear was still deep in me, urging me to go back. But I went up to the players and kicked and scattered the cards. Red looked up, surprised at my impudence after my recent flight. He got up slowly. You're looking for more? He asked menacingly. As before, his hand dived into his pocket for the knuckle duster. But I made a quick jabbing movement and Red, howling with pain, rolled on the ground. Bewildered, he got up and came at me, swinging his head furiously from side to side like a maddened bull. I caught his wrist and squeezed slowly, as I had read in the book, until the knuckle duster dropped from his limp fingers. Nursing his hand, Red fell down again. He was sobbing and smearing the tears over his pock-marked face with his grubby fist. That day Red ceased to be the monarch of our street. And from that day on, I knew for certain that one need not fear the strong. All one needs is to know the way to beat them. For every strong man there is a special jujitsu. What I also learned on this occasion was that to be a poet, I had not only to write poems, but know how to stand up for them. Glossary. Parallel bars. A pair of parallel bars on posts for gymnastic exercises. Session. Single meeting, for a particular purpose. Miraculous. Most remarkable, like a miracle. Jujitsu. Japanese art of self-defense. One-tet-un. A card game. Absorbed, entirely occupied, giving one's full attention to impudence, utter disrespect or rudeness. Menacingly, in a threatening manner. Bewildered, puzzled, confused. Think it out. 1. How did the narrator train himself to grow stronger? 2. How did he get a textbook on jiu-jitsu? 3. How long did he train himself before the final encounter with Red? 4. Where did the final encounter take place? What was Red doing then? 5. How did the narrator attack Red? 6. How did Red react to the narrator's attack? 7. How did the narrator tackle Red? 8. How did Red suffer at the hands of the narrator? 9. What lesson did the narrator learn during his encounter with a bully like Red? 10. What career did the narrator prepare himself for? 11. Which of these do you think is true? Courage means not having fear at all, or courage means conquering fear? Justify your choice. Post-reading activities. Doing the words. A. In order to understand what you are reading from an English text, you need to guess the meaning of unfamiliar words, expressions from the context. Guess at the meaning of words from the way it is used in the sentences, text below. This will help you read faster and easier. I. Alexander was so good with horse that he could ride any horse masterfully. Clue. Did Alexander behave as a master? E. His courage used to bewilder many, including his father. One example was when he tried to master Bucephalus, an unruly horse. Everyone was bewildered at his behavior. Clue. Bigger words come from smaller ones whose meaning you would know. B plus wild plus a. Wild is something that we don't know. E. He never worked as a lieutenant in the Greek army but was always its leader. Clue is a lieutenant senior or junior to the leader of an army. IV. Alexander wanted to conquer the whole world. He actually conquered most of it. Clue is it to rule or defeat. V. Although he died very young, his military achievement was impressive. Clue, bigger words come from smaller ones that you may know. Press plus IV. Was Alexander's achievement remarkable or ordinary? B. Some words are in italics in each of the following sentences, and 3 different meanings are given below the sentence. Identify the meaning that best fits the words in italics. 1. What matters in the struggle for life is to overcome fear. I. Present situation. E. Have an important effect. E. Problems. 2. Most of the play is written in verse. I. Prose. E. Dialogues. E. Poetry. 3. We have decided to complete the project at whatever cost. I. No matter what the risk or loss may be. E. Without considering how much money is needed. E. In the least expensive way. 4. I know for certain that daffodils bloom in spring. I. Want to make sure. E. Know without doubt. E. Declare with confidence. 5. She has made up her mind to buy a car this month. I. Hoped. E. Decided. E. Thought. 6. We must stand up for what is right even if we are standing alone. I. Defend. E. Represent. E. Face boldly. C. Mark the use of heel in 2 or 3 lieutenants, in peaked caps back to front like Reds, tripped at his heels. Look up the word heel in the dictionary. Study the meanings of heel in the following idiomatic expressions. Use each of them in a sentence of your own. A. Take to one's heels. B. On the heels of. C. Cool one's heels. D. Kick up one's heels. A. Turn on one's heels. F. Head over heels. G. Come to heel. H. Show a clean pair of heels. The legend behind a legend. Hariharan Balakrishan. Introducing the author. Hariharan Balakrishna is a writer and columnist. This article was published in the literary page of The Hindu, the 22nd of January 2006. Unit I. Warm up. A legend is a story or a narrative about a very famous person. People are also referred to as legends if they have been unusually successful in their own fields of work. The title mentions 2 legends. Who are the 2 legends mentioned in this unit? Why are they termed legends? What did the author plan to do when he came to know about the 2? Read the following unit of the text to find out the answers. The text. Carrie made the entire forest where she lived famous. She was not a bandit queen but Carrie, the tigress of Jashipur. It was exactly 25 years ago when I spent 2 days and 2 nights with Carrie in the menagerie of Saroj and Nihar. I had read a small news item in the Statesman about the latest exploits of a domesticated tigress in the Similipal forests of Odisha. Suddenly, it struck me that this was happening in my own state. I thought, why not attempt to experience it myself? I spoke to N.S. Iyengar, a senior journalist in Berhampur, and a few other elders. I was told that Carrie was under the care of a rather gruff and tough man called Saroj Raj Chaudhary who brooked no nonsense and suffered no fools. I got his address and wrote asking if I could visit him. For good measure, I referred to a few itinerant articles I had written for Indian magazines. It was a shot in the dark and I did not really expect to hear from him. But to my utter delight, I got a letter within a week inviting me to carry Jashipur, giving precise instructions about how to reach there. Mr. Chaudhary also asked me to let him know in advance how and when I was reaching. I gave him a date and said I would be taking a bus from Bhubaneswar on a particular night. Glossary. Bandit Queen, Queen of the Robbers Menagerie, a collection of wild animals, a shot in the dark, a hopeful attempt. Brook no nonsense, tolerate only important and necessary things, suffer no fools, do not tolerate stupidity in others. Think it out. 1. Who is Carrie? 2. How did the writer come to know about Carrie? 3. Who was the foster father of Carrie? 4. Which state does the writer belong to? Para 2. 5. What did he learn about Saroj Raj Chaudhary as a person? 6. How did he contact Mr. Chaudhary? 7. Why did he refer some of his articles to Mr. Chaudhary? 8. Did Mr. Chaudhary reply to the author's letter? What did he write? Unit 2. Warm up. How did the author reach Khari Jashipur? How was his welcome at Mr. Chaudhary's house? How did Khari greet the author? Read the following unit of the text for the details. The text. I packed my bag, took the train and boarded the overcrowded bus from Bhubaneswar. I arrived sometime before 4 a.m., wondering where to go in that semi-darkness. To my utter surprise, within a minute there was the click of boots and a voice welcoming me to Khari Jashipur. The forest guard, detailed to escort me, took me to the guest house, put me in my room, assured that water was in the jug, I could sleep as long as I wanted and Saab would see me as soon as I was ready. I think I had an hour of blissful sleep. I woke up with a start when I heard the unmistakable voice of the tiger just outside my door. I was terror-struck. Within minutes, a bearer came to the room, YTH hot tea and biscuits. He smiled at the expression on my face and assured me that it was only Khari outside the door, making friendly enquiries about the new guest in the house. I finished my tea, had a quick shower and went to the main house. Saroj Raj Chaudhary was sitting on a large chair. There was a sloth bear behind him, holding on to his waist and making gurgling sounds. He said, "Get down, Jambu, get down," and rose to greet me, a frail man in his 50s, slightly balding on the top. We got talking. I didn't find a gruff and rough no-nonsense man. What I found was one of the most humane human beings I had ever met in my life. Glossary. Escort guide. Humane, showing kindness towards people and animals, caring. Think it out. 1. How did the writer come to Bhubaneswar? 2. How did he go to Jashipur from Bhubaneswar? 3. How did the forest guard receive him? 4. Why was he terror-struck? 5. What did the bearer tell him about Khari? 6. What was Mr. Chaudhary doing when the writer met him? 7. How did Mr. Chaudhary greet the author? 8. What was the name of the bear? 9. What was the physical appearance of Mr. Chaudhary? 10. What kind of man did the author find Mr. Chaudhary to be? Unit 3. Warm up. Mr. Chaudhary had many interesting stories to tell about Khari and the other pets at his home. Read the following unit of the text for the details. The text. Here is the first story that emerged from this very unusual man between sips of coffee. As you will see, I have different species of wild animals in this house. They all came in at different stages of their lives. I have debunked the theory that they cannot coexist unless they are together from infancy. One thing I wanted to experiment with was the reaction of a young tiger to a snake. One day, when Khari was much younger, we found a baby krait in the house. As you know, krait is one of the most poisonous snakes. I was noting Khari's reaction to its presence. Khari was curious to know more about the strange new creature. Every time the krait got too close to Khari, I would pull it back by its tail. This went on for some time. At some point, I must have been a little unmindful. It turned round and bit me. I immediately tied a tourniquet above that and got the poison out. I saw the doctor as soon as possible. Luckily, it was a baby. Still, some of the poison got into my bloodstream, and as a result, I am now a permanent patient of hypoglycemia. By the time he finished this astonishing story, Jambu took a fancy to me and climbed behind to give me his bear hug. A stern no from Saroj was enough to dissuade him from this expression of fondness. As the day progressed, between our conversations and the intermittent crackle on the VHF wireless set by which he was giving instructions to his men in the forests, I got to know a veritable joint family that was living inside the compound: a mongoose, a pangolin, wild cat twins, a country dog, and a blind hyena. Each had a name. Glossary. Debunk V to expose as being false or exaggerated. Tourniquet, a piece of cloth bound tightly on an arm or a leg to stop bleeding. Hypoglycemia, condition of having a very low blood pressure. Take a fancy to start liking someone. Intermittent, occurring occasionally or at regular or irregular intervals. Crackle, making short sharp sounds. Think it out. 1. What theory did Mr. Chaudhary prove wrong? 2. What was his first story about? 3. Why is it so unique and amazing? 4. Why did Mr. Chaudhary allow Carrie to come near a crate? 5. What was Carrie's reaction to the presence of the crate? 6. How did the experiment affect him? 7. What did the bear try to do with the writer? 8. What prevented the bear from doing so? 9. What kind of family did Mr. Chaudhary have? 10. What was his relationship with different animals? Unit IV. Warm up. How did Saroj Raj Chaudhary come across Carrie? How does he recount the story of his first meeting with Carrie as a cub? Read the following unit of the text for the details. The text. Carrie's story started on October 5, 1974, when 12 Kharia tribals of Similipal brought a 2-month-old tiger cub to Saroj Raj Chaudhary, an officer of the Indian Forest Service. Saroj noticed that it was a female, famished and confused. His first experience of what he was to become his passion in life was angry snarls and scratching claws. But the veteran forester and instinctive lover of wildlife knew how to handle a hungry, angry cub. He imitated the sounds of a mother tigress. It in minutes. Her confidence was firmly anchored in the fostering human, is how he recalled those first few minutes between the legends. Early next morning, Saroj started for his inspection of the tiger reserve area. I tagged along in the jeep that snaked through narrow road in the woods amidst lush foliage. My mother gave me a gun for my 8th birthday. As a young man, I shot wildlife with abandon. But soon, I realized that there is greater happiness in conserving these beautiful animals that do no wanton harm to man, as one of the things he told me about his life during that long travel. At that time, he was an authority on the tiger and director of Project Tiger in India. Saroj introduced the tiger tracing method of tiger census, where the pug marks of each animal with distinctive measurements and characteristics are meticulously recorded. For the night, we camped at a guest house deep in the jungle. It was a wooden structure with functional rooms and a bath. It was built on stilts, and stood a good 15 feet above ground. I experienced 4R the first time, one night atop a magnificent machan. Glossary. Famished, very hungry. Meticulous, paying careful attention to every details. Lush foliage, leaves of trees growing luxuriantly. Wanton harm, reckless harm. Think it out. 1. How and when did Mr. Chaudhary come across Carrie? 2. In what condition did he find it? 3. How did he manage the hungry and confused cub? 4. How did he treat wildlife in his young age? 5. What did say about his change of attitude towards wildlife to THA author? 6. What was his contribution to the Tiger Project? 7. What was the guest house like? 8. What new experience did the author have in the Tiger Reserve area? Unit V. Warm up. Did the writer meet Mr. Chaudhary for the second time? What new animals did he see there? How long did he stay with Mr. Chaudhary? Read the text below for the details. The text. I went to Carrie Jashipur again after 3 months, as I wanted to know more about Carrie. Saroj was gracious enough to welcome me once again. In addition to my old friends in that house, this time I found an 8-foot-long addition, a young python. Within the next couple of hours, I continued my quest of the man and his passion. But then, there was a wireless message from the World Wildlife Fund. Saroj was asked to immediately catch a flight for an important meeting at New Delhi the next day. We drove to the Dum Dum airport and I saw him off at Calcutta. That was the last time I met this legend behind a legend. In just over 3 months, Carrie died. Saroj Raj Chaudhary did not live much longer. A unique tale of the tiger ended there. A salute is due, at least now 25 years hence. Glossary. Quest search think it out. 1. After what interval of time did the writer visit Mr. Chaudhary for the second time? 2. What new addition to Chaudhary family did he find there? 3. Why did he get less time to interact with Mr. Chaudhary this time? 4. Who died first, Carrie or Mr. Chaudhary? 5. Who are the two legends the writer talks about? 6. The text is more about Mr. Chaudhary or Carrie. 7. Can you guess now why the title of the text is The Legend Behind the Legend? Post-reading activities. I. Arranging in order. Provided below are some events from the lesson. These are not in order. Arrange them in order as they occur in the lesson by putting numbers within the brackets provided against the items. 1 is done for you. A. Carrie played with the crate. B. Carrie was brought to Mr. Chaudhary. C. The writer sees Mr. Chaudhary off at Dum Dum Airport. 8d. The writer reads a news item about Carrie. A. Chaudhary writes a letter to the writer. F. The writer reaches Jashipur by bus. G. He stays with Chaudhary in a camp guest house in the forest. H. The writer saw a python as a pet of Chaudhary. 2. Note making. Note making helps you to develop your reading and writing skills. This lesson has, you know, two major themes, Carrie and Mr. Chaudhary. You have to read the lesson, make notes in words and phrases on these two and then use these points to write about them. One has been done below on Carrie as a model. Make notes on Mr. Chaudhary. Notes on Carrie. Para 1. Tigress of Jashipur. Made the forest famous. Domesticated tigress in the Similipal forest of Odisha. Writer read a news item about Carrie. Para 5. Carrie rode to welcome the writer. He was terror-struck. Para 9. On October 5, 1974, Carrie was brought as a cub, hungry, confused. Para 15. Chaudhary managed her imitating the sounds of a mother tigress. Death of Carrie followed by the death of Chaudhary. With the help of these notes, write a paragraph on Carrie. Carrie. Carrie was a domesticated tigress. She made the Similipal forest and Jashipur famous. The writer read about her from a news item. Then he visited Jashipur to see Carrie and Chaudhary, who had kept Carrie as a pet. He came to know from Mr. Chaudhary that Carrie was brought to Chaudhary on October 5, 1974 by 12 Kharia tribals. It was then a small cub, hungry and confused. Chaudhary handled the cub well by imitating the sounds of a tigress. She grew up as a domesticated tigress under the loving care of Chaudhary. But she did not live long. Chaudhary also died soon after the death of Carrie. Now write notes from the lesson and develop the notes into a write-up on Mr. Chaudhary. 3. Doing with words collocation. Collocation in expressions means which words go with which other words. Collocations are fixed expressions. For example, sweet dreams, daydreams, bad dreams, pipe dream, hard-earned money, public money, extra money, taxpayers' money. A. Match the columns. A. B. Disturbed legend, water theory, living instruction, absurd, sleep specific, and idea debunk bearer. B. Find out 5 collocations from the text. Example, to take a fancy. C. Which word in each line does not collocate with the head word? I. A theory, come up with, do, debunk, build. E. A debate, open, listen to, join in, find. E. Legend, fresh, famous, well-known, sports. IV. Veteran, soldier, idealist, activist, man v. Gracious, welcome, hospitality, building, smile, behold the stars carry, the tigress adopted and domesticated by Saroj Raj Chaudhary. Saroj Raj Chaudhary, a forest officer and lover of wildlife with Carrie as cub. The legend behind a legend. Saroj Raj Chaudhary and Jambu, his pet bear. Tale piece. Read the following story and enjoy. Androcles and the Lion, by Aesop, translated by G.F. Townsend. A slave named Androcles once escaped from his master and fled to the forest. As he was wandering about there, he came upon a lion lying down moaning and groaning. At first he turned to flee, but finding that the lion did not pursue him, he turned back and went up to him. As he came near, the lion put out his paw, which was all swollen and bleeding, and Androcles found that a huge thorn had got into it, and was causing all the pain. He pulled out the thorn and bound up the paw of the lion, who was soon able to rise and lick the hand of Androcles like a dog. Then the lion took Androcles to his cave, and every day used to bring him meat. But shortly afterwards both Androcles and the lion were captured, and the slave was sentenced to be thrown to the lion after the latter had been kept without food for several days. The emperor and all his court came to see the spectacle, and Androcles was led out into the middle of the arena. Soon the lion was let loose from his den and rushed bounding and roaring towards his victim. But as soon as he came near Androcles he recognized his friend, and fawned upon him, and licked his hands like a friendly dog. The emperor, surprised at this, summoned Androcles to him, who told him the whole story. Whereupon the slave was pardoned and freed, and the lion let loose to his native forest. The Golden Touch. Nathaniel Hawthorne. Introducing the author. Nathaniel Hawthorne, July 4, 1804 to May 19, 1864, is an American novelist and short story writer. His themes often center on the inherent evil and sin of humanity, and his works have moral messages and deep psychological complexity. Unit I. Warm up. Human beings have fascination for gold. Unusual greed for gold invites sorrow, doesn't it? Hawthorne's story The Golden Touch narrates the misery of a legendary king who suffered for his desire to amass gold. Read the following unit of the text and note how King Midas was obsessed with the yellow metal. The text. Long ago, there lived a very rich man called Midas. Besides being rich, he was a king, and he had a little daughter called Marigold. King Midas loved gold more than anything else in the world. He liked being a king, chiefly because he loved his golden crow Wn. He loved his daughter dearly too, and the more he loved her, the more gold he wanted for her sake. When King Midas saw the golden light of the sun at evening, he wished it could turn everything into real gold. When Marigold came to him with a bunch of sweet yellow flowers, he would say, if they were as golden as they looked, they would be worth picking. Even the roses in his garden did not please him any more, the largest and sweetest and most beautiful roses ever seen, because they were not made of gold. And although the king was very fond of music in his youth, the only music he loved now was the sound of gold coins, one against another. At last, King Midas could not bear to touch anything that was not gold. He used to go down to a secret room under his palace where he kept his precious store. He would let himself in and count his gold pieces. He would hold the bars of gold, and admire his gold cups and plates, until he could hardly bear to leave them. Now in those days a great many wonderful things used to happen just as they do today. One morning King Midas was in his treasure room when he noticed that the sun was shining into the room more brightly than usual. Not only that, but a stranger stood there, smiling at him in the light of the sunbeam. King Midas knew that he had locked himself in as usual, and so he guessed that his visitor was no ordinary person. The stranger looked at the gold pieces that the king was counting. You seem to be a very rich man, he said. But it has taken me a long time to collect this gold, said King Midas. If I could live 1,000 years, I might have time to get richer. What? Aren't you satisfied? asked the stranger. What else do you want? Midas thought carefully. This was a wonderful chance, and he felt that the stranger had magical powers. I am tired of collecting my riches so slowly, he said. I wish everything I touch could be turned into gold. The golden touch, exclaimed the stranger. Are you sure you would never regret it? How could I regret such a thing? Said Midas. It would give me perfect happiness at last. Very well, then, the stranger said, as he turned to go. Tomorrow at sunrise you will find that you have the golden touch. The light of the sunbeam brightened so vividly that Midas closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the stranger had gone. Think it out. 1. What do you learn about King Midas from the first 2 paragraphs of the story? 2. What did he wish when saw the golden light of the evening sun? 3. Why didn't he like the roses of his garden? 4. How did he spend his time in his treasure room? 5. How did he come across the stranger? 6. How did King Midas answer the stranger's question, what else do you want? 7. How did the stranger fulfill his wishes? Unit 2. Warm up. How did King Midas feel when his desire for turning everything into gold was fulfilled? Read the following unit of the text and mark how King Midas felt when what he touched changed into gold. The text. Next morning, King Midas awoke before the dawn. He looked eagerly to see if his bed had been turned into gold. But no, it was exactly as it had been before. He lay, very disappointed, looking around his room. Suddenly, the earliest sunbeam of the rising sun shone through the window and up to the ceiling above. It seemed to reflect its golden light towards him. Looking at the sheet on his bed, Midas was astonished to find that it had become cloth of gold. The golden 2ch had truly come to him, with the first sunbeam. King Midas got out of bed in excitement. He touched one of the legs of the bed as he did so, and it immediately became a golden pillar. He pulled the curtain at the window, and at once it became golden, too. He put on his clothes, and found himself dressed in golden cloth. He took up his spectacles and put them on, and he found he could see nothing at all. The glasses had turned into gold and he could not see through them. He took them off again. Never mind, he thought to himself. The golden touch is worth more than a pair of spectacles, and Marigold will be able to read to me. King Midas went downstairs and into the garden. He noticed that even the brass handle of the door became gold as soon as he turned it. Then he went among the rose trees that had always been his pride and joy in the past. When he went in to breakfast that morning, he felt more hungry than usual. While he was waiting for his eggs to be ready, little Marigold came in crying bitterly. Look, father, she cried, holding out a golden rose. I went to pick you some rose and they are yellow and hard, and their sweet scent is gone. Never mind, my dear, said her father. They are worth much more like that. Sit down and eat your breakfast. He poured himself a cup of coffee as he spoke. The coffee pot was a golden one when he put it back on the table. Then he tried a spoonful of coffee to see if it was sweet enough. But it had become liquid gold. Well, he exclaimed. He was thirsty. What is the matter, father? Asked Marigold. Nothing, child. Drink your milk, Midas said. But the eggs that he tried to eat, the fish, the bread, the butter, all the food was uneatable for the king, that morning. How am I to have any breakfast? He thought. Such costly food is before me, and I can eat nothing. He looked across the table at Marigold. She was eating happily, her tears forgotten. She looked up, saw that something was wrong, and came round to comfort her father. What is wrong, father? She asked. Midas bent down and kissed his little daughter. Then what a terrible change came over Marigold. Her sweet little face turned to yellow gold, her lovely hair became golden metal, her little body hardened into a figure of solid gold. What had he done? Think it out. 1. When did the king discover that his desire for the golden touch had been fulfilled? 2. Why was the king not sad when his spectacles turned into gold? 3. What was Marigold's complaint about the golden rose? 4. How did the king console his daughter? 5. Why couldn't the king enjoy his breakfast? 6. What happened to Marigold when the king kissed her? Unit 3. Warm up. How do you expect the story to end? Does King Midas repent for his desire for gold? Read the following unit of the text and note how King Midas got rid of his golden touch. The text. This story would be too sad for us all if we lingered too long on this terrible sight. King Midas could not bear to look at Marigold, yet he could not leave her side. He felt so sad and sorrowful that he wished he was the poorest man in all the world, if only his beloved daughter could be herself again. In despair, Midas looked about him. Suddenly he saw the stranger that had visited him the day before. "Well, Midas," said the stranger, "how do you like having the golden touch?" "I have lost everything I really loved," said King Midas. "I am full of sorrow and regret. Gold is of no use to me now." "So you have learned something since yesterday?" asked the stranger. "Now which is worth more, the golden touch or a cup of cold water?" "Oh, blessed water!" exclaimed Midas. "Will I ever taste it again? The golden touch or a piece of bread?" The stranger said. "A piece of bread," answered Midas, "is worth all the gold on earth." "Gold or your own little daughter?" asked the stranger. "Oh, my child," cried poor Midas. "I would not have given one hair of her head for the power to change the whole earth into gold." The stranger looked seriously at King Midas. "You are wiser than you were," he said. "Your heart is still flesh and blood. You know truly that the common things of life, which are within everyone's reach, are more valuable than riches. Tell me, do you want to keep the golden touch?" "No, it is hateful to me now," said Midas passionately. A fly settled on the king's nose and immediately fell to the floor, a small scrap of gold. Midas shuddered. "Then go down to the end of your garden," said the stranger, "and wash yourself in the water of the river there. Then bring some of the same water and sprinkle it over anything that you wish to change back again. If you do this truly and sincerely, you can set right again the results of your greed of gold." King Midas bowed his head. When he looked up again, the stranger had vanished. The king ran at once to the river. Without waiting to take off his clothes, he dived in. In the coolness of the water, he felt at once that a weight had been lifted from his heart and body. He came out of the river. He was free of the golden touch. He put out his hand and touched a wild rose on the river's bank, and he found with thankfulness that it remained the same sweet flower. Taking up a water pot, he quickly filled it with river water and took it back to the palace. I expect the servants thought it very strange to see their royal master carrying a water pot, but that water was more precious to Midas than an ocean of gold. The king went straight to the golden figure of little Marigold. As he sprinkled the water on her, the rosy color came back to her cheeks. She began to sneeze and shake the water from her golden hair. "Oh, father, see how wet I am, and my dress was clean this morning," she said. Marigold did not know what had happened to her, and her father did not tell her how wrong and foolish he had been. He took her out into the garden, where they watered the flowers together and picked a bunch of sweetly scented roses. Think it out. 1. How did the king realize that the golden touch was a useless gift for him? 2. You are wiser than you were. Why did the stranger say so? 3. What did the stranger advise the king to do to get rid of his golden touch? 4. How did the king get back his daughter? 5. Is the story a tragic or comic one? Give your reasons. Post-reading activities. A. Arrange the following sentences according to their logical order. A. Midas said, "I wish everything I touch could be turned into gold." B. The golden touch, exclaimed the stranger. C. Midas said, "It would give me perfect happiness." D. The stranger said, "Tomorrow at sunrise you will find that you have the golden touch." A. King Midas came across a stranger smiling at him. F. The stranger asked, "What do you want?" G. He guessed that the stranger was no ordinary person. B. Doing with words. 1. Write the antonyms of the following words: love, please, beautiful, bright, usual, careful, perfect, happiness, proud, wise, common, sincere. 2. Match the expressions in column A with their one-word substitutes in column B. A. That which is fit to eat. I. Linger. B. To be late or slow in going away. E. Eatable. C. Tremble with fear or disgust. E. Greed. D. Strong desire for more food, wealth, etc. IV. Dive. A. To go head first into water. V. Shudder. 3. Write the nouns derived from the following verbs: collect, satisfy, exclaim, disappoint, reflect, astonish, expect. 4. Fill in the blanks with the adjectival forms of the following nouns: gold, beauty, palace, magic. Comma. Spectacle, comfort, sorrow, passion. Comma. 5. Fill in the blanks with the verbs from which the following nouns have been derived: speech, thought, excitement. Comma. Collection, service. In London in Minus Falls. Lewis Fisher. Introducing the author. Lewis Fisher, 1896-1970, is an outstanding American writer, columnist, and analyst of world affairs. He occupies a unique place among Gandhiji's admirers in the West. He has closely studied the life and teachings of Mahatma Gandhi in his book Life of Mahatma Gandhi, 1950. Unit I. Warm up. Do you know that the Second Round Table Conference in London is an important landmark in the history of Indian freedom movement? It was held in London from the 7th of September 1931 to the 1st of December 1931. Note that, in London in Minus Falls, forms a chapter in the life of Mahatma Gandhi. In this essay, the author portrays the character of Gandhiji more as a humane human being than as a politician. Read the following unit of the text and note how the author relates Gandhiji's arrival and stay at London as India's emissary to the Second Round Table Conference. The text. Gandhi sailed from Bombay on the SS Rajputana at noon on August 29, 1931, accompanied by his youngest son, Devadas, his chief secretary, Mahadev Desai, who, he said, out Boswell, Miss Slade, Pyarelal Nair, and aide, G.D. Birla, the textile millionaire Pandit Malaviya, and Mrs. Naidu. Gandhi was proceeding as sole delegate of Congress to the Second Round Table Conference in London. No other delegates were necessary since he spoke for the organization and for a considerable segment of Vocal India. In London from September 12 to December 5, he stayed, most of the time, at Kingsley Hall, an East Settlement house, as guest of Muriel Leicester, who had visited him in 1926. Mornings he took walks through the nearby slum areas, and men and women on the way to work would smile at him and he engaged them in conversation and later came to their homes. Children called him Uncle Gandhi and sidled up to him and held his hand. One mischief-loving youngster called out, "Hey, Gandhi, where's your trousers?" The Mahatma had a good laugh. Gh. Glossary. SS. Rajputana steamship Rajputana. Out Boswell Mahadev Desai seemed to outshine Boswell in The Art of Keeping Diaries. Aid assistant. Segment section. Segment of Vocal India. Large section of people who spoke in India's interest. Slum and urban area heavily populated by the poor. Sidle walk in a shy or nervous way. Think it out. 1. Why was Gandhi chosen as the sole delegate of Congress to the Second Round Table Conference? 2. How did Gandhi befriend the men and women of the slum areas of London? Unit 2. Warm up. Do you know Gandhiji was humble in dress and simple in manners? Read the following unit of the text and note how Gandhiji was simple in his dress and had a unique approach to his goal of complete freedom for India. The text. He was a wonderful newspaper copy, and journalists buzzed around him incessantly. One reporter questioned Gandhi about his dress. Your people, he replied, wear +4s, mine are -4s. When he was invited to tea in Buckingham Palace with King George V and Queen Mary, all England was agog over what he would wear. He wore the usual loincloth, sandals, a shawl, and his dangling dollar watch. Subsequently, someone asked Gandhi whether he had enough on. The king, he replied, had enough on for both of us. He enjoyed himself everywhere. He had talks with Lord Irwin, wartime Prime Minister David Lloyd George, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Field Marshal Smuts, Bernard Shaw, and scores of others, and went down into the country near Reading to pay his respects to Colonel Maddock, who had performed the appendectomy on him in Poona jail. Winston Churchill refused to see him. He also addressed innumerable public meetings and spent 2 memorable weekends at Oxford. In these and in the private conversations he tried, above all else, to explain what he meant by the independence of India. He would cut India off from the empire entirely, from the British nation not at all, if I want India to gain and not to grieve. The emperorship mu saint go, and I should love to be an equal partner with Britain, sharing her joys and sorrows, and an equal partner with the dominions. But it must be a partnership on equal terms. He was describing precisely and with remarkable precision the status free India assumed in the Commonwealth in 1948. He went even further. He saw what many of his followers have not yet discerned. Isolated independence is not the goal, he asserted. It is voluntary interdependence. Liberated colonies so treasure their newfound independence, they think it is a viable reality. But the law of nature in love, friendship, work, progress, and security is creative interdependence. Glossary. Buzz, we talk noisily, incessantly, continuously, +4s more clothing than the usual items of the Englishman's dress, namely suit, shirt, hat, and tie -4s without those conventional items but simple clothing. Of homespun loincloth and a shawl agog excited. Dangling hanging loosely. Dollar watch, dollar-like round-shaped pocket watch. Bernard Shaw, famous British dramatist, public speaker and free thinker. Appendectomy, surgical removal of appendicitis, memorable, unforgettable. Empire, the British Empire. Emperorship, power of the supreme ruler over subject nations, dominions, self-governing countries of the British Commonwealth, equal terms, equal position or status, provision, foresight. Commonwealth, former British colonies forming a group of free nations associating politically for common good. Discern, see clearly. Isolated independence, freedom alone or for its own sake. Voluntary interdependence, willing acceptance of mutual help. Treasure, we hold at great value. Viable, feasible, capable of success. Think it out. 1. What was Gandhi's reply to the journalist's question about his dress? 2. How was Gandhi dressed when he went to see King George V? 3. What did Gandhi say in reply to the question whether he had enough on during his meeting with the king? 4. How did Gandhi enjoy himself in London? 5. What was Gandhi's idea of free India as a dominion in the Commonwealth? 6. What did Gandhi mean by creative interdependence of the member nations of the Commonwealth? Unit 3 Warm up. Do you know Gandhiji was accessible to all? Did he confine himself to the round table conference only? Read the following unit of the text and note how Gandhiji spent his time in London. The text. Everywhere he made friends by his charm, frankness, humanity, and accessibility. He even walked into the lion's den in Lancashire where his agitation for khadi and against foreign cloth had caused painful unemployment. At a meeting of the Textile Millwork RS, one man said, "I am one of the unemployed, but if I was in India, I would say the same thing that Mr. Gandhi is saying." A delightful photograph taken outside the Greenfield Mill at Bhavan shows Gandhi wrapped in white homespun from neck to knee, for it was cold, and squeezed in among cheering, applauding women, one of whom, to his embarrassment, is holding his hand. He made friends even among those he hurt. "I found that my work lies outside the conference," he told a London audience. This is the real round table conference. The seed which is being sown now may result in softening the British spirit and in preventing the brutalization of human beings. Mahadev Desai's diaries show that the Mahatma often got to bed at 2 a.m., awoke at 3:45 a.m. for prayers, wrote letters and read papers, rested again from 5 to 6, and had no respite from then till the next morning at 1 or 2 a.m. Small wonder that he occasionally slept at sessions of the conference. He did not give it his best. The Round Table Conference was bound to fail. Lord Reading, a member of the British delegation, formulated the British purpose in one sentence: "I believe that the true policy between Britain and India is that we should in this country strive all we can to give effect to the views of India while preserving at the same time our own position, which we must not and cannot abandon." An irresistible force, India's yearning to be free, met an immovable object, Britain's wish to stay in India. That made agreement impossible. The British government had assigned 2 Scotland Yard detectives to guard Gandhi in England. They were special policemen, giants in size, who usually protected royalty. They grew to like the little man. Unlike most dignitaries, Gandhi did not keep them at arm's length or ignore them. He discussed public affairs with them and visited their homes. Before leaving England, he requested that they be allowed to accompany him to Brindisi, Italy, whence he would sail for India. Their chief asked the reason why. "Because they are part of my family," Gandhi replied. From India he sent each a watch engraved with love from Mr. Gandhi. Glossary. Frankness, openness. Humanity, kind consideration for man, humanitarian feeling, accessibility, readiness to be reached or to mix with lion's den, lion's cave, a dangerous place. The boycott of foreign cloth under the Swadeshi movement started by Gandhi had paralyzed Lancashire's cloth mills, and the mill owners were most critical of him. Homespun cloth, for which the spinning is done 80 home squeezed, pressed from all sides. Applaud, show appreciation by clapping of hands, embarrassment, mental discomfort. Softening, making soft. Brutalization, the condition of being treated in a cruel and savage manner. Abandon, give up. Irresistible, what cannot be resisted or stopped, yearning, eagerness. Immovable, fixed or static. Scotland Yard, London Metropolitan Police, royalty, persons of royal descent, dignitaries, important personalities at arm's length, at a safe distance. Think it out. 1. Which qualities in Gandhi turned his opponents to friends? 2. How did he make friends even among those he hurt? 3. What was Gandhi's work in London outside the Round Table Conference? 4. Why did the Second Round Table Conference fail to bring about an agreement? 5. How did Gandhi treat the Scotland Yard detectives? Post-reading activities. Doing with words. A. Match the italicized expressions in the text below with their synonyms given in the table. 1. The audience praises the speaker who can make a nice speech by clapping of hands. 2. The 15th of August is an unforgettable day for the Indians. 3. The country is excited over a possible outbreak of war. 4. Digging gold mines in Odisha is not a feasible project. 5. Nobody can see clearly the real cause of the spread of violence. 6. Rapid industrialization has brought in the condition of being treated in a cruel and savage manner of human beings. 7. A large section of public opinion is in favor of the nationalization of road transport. B. Make new words by adding n. Example: soft, soften. Hard, strength, length. Light, height, bright, tight. C. Make sentences using the following expressions. Outnumber, sidle up, pay respect, cut off, above all, at arm's length. D. Mark the use of articles a and the in the following sentences. A. Kingsley Hall was an East Settlement house in London. B. The Mahatma had a good laugh. C. Gandhi addressed a union of mill workers at Bhavan. D. Gandhi sailed from Bombay on the SS Rajputana. Note I. How in A, B, and C, countable nouns are preceded by the articles a and. E. The is used before Mahatma, which is specified in B, and before nouns denoting names of ships, rivers, mountain ranges, etc. As in D. E. Adjectives when preceded by the denote class, e.g. the rich, the virtuous, etc. and are used as nouns. Insert the appropriate articles where necessary in the right places in the sentences given below. 1. Pyarelal was aide of Gandhiji. 2. Gandhiji was sole delegate to second round table conference. 3. He spent considerable portion of his salary for poor. 4. After graduation she joined university. 5. Germans are industrious nation. 6. Mr. James is European journalist. 7. Gandhiji's dream did not become reality. 8. Delightful picture of leader was taken outside the Greenfield Mill. 9. Rich lead life of unrest. 10. I like beauty of this place. A. A preposition links nouns, pronouns and phrases to other words in a sentence. Use the appropriate prepositions in the blanks. 1. He was sent as a delegate the general body meeting. For 2. 2. The social workers took a walk the nearby slum areas. Through, into. 3. Pay proper respect, your superiors. For 2. 4. She smiled me while passing by a house. 2. At. 5. What do you mean democracy? For by. 6. He was wrapped white cotton cloth. In, by. 7. He engaged them conversation. With, in, behold the STRs. Mahadev Desai, Gandhiji's chief secretary. Ghanshyam Das G.D. Birla, a leading Indian businessman. Pandit Madan Mohan Malaviya, educationist and freedom fighter, president of the Indian National Congress on 4 occasions and the founder of Banaras Hindu University, BHU, at Varanasi SMT. Sarojini Naidu, poet and statesman. James Boswell, 1740-1795, was a lawyer, diarist, and author. He is best known as the biographer of a celebrated English literary figure Samuel Johnson. Boswell has lent his name to the art of keeping diaries. George Bernard Shaw, 1856-1950, is a British dramatist, author and socialist. The Cancer Fight, From Hiroshima to Houston. Ritsuko Komaki. Introducing the author. Dr. Ritsuko Komaki is a radiation oncologist at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, USA and an advocate of proton therapy. Unit I. Warm-up. During the final stages of World War II in 1945, 2 atomic bombs were dropped on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. The little boy was dropped on the city of Hiroshima on the 6th of August 1945, followed by the fat man over Nagasaki on the 9th of August. In the title of this text, what do you think relates Hiroshima to Houston in the USA? Read the following unit of the text and note the contributions of Dr. Ritsuko Komaki towards the treatment of radiation-related ailments. The text. Dr. Ritsuko Komaki was living with her family near Osaka when the atomic bomb exploded on her native Hiroshima in 1945. But the family returned to the devastated city when she was 4, and Komaki grew up a witness to the long-term effects, which likely contributed heavily to the deaths of about half her relatives, including her father. Like many Japanese, she developed both a fascination with and fear of radiation. When her close friend Sadako Sasaki died at age 11 of radiation-related leukemia, Komaki vowed to become a cancer doctor. Today, drive. Komaki has learned how to apply radiation creatively and no longer fears it. Instead, as Clinical Section Chief and Program Director of Thoracic Radiation Oncology at the University of Texas M.D. Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, she uses it in increasingly sophisticated ways to fight cancer. She is one of the world's leading researchers and advocates of proton radiation beam therapy, an emerging treatment that many oncologists consider the safest and most effective available. And according to Komaki, her work is much better done in the context of a university program than at private institutions. Our patients, including all of our proton patients, are treated under clinical trials, which monitor results on large numbers of patients, she points out. It's difficult to treat patients on trials at private hospitals or clinics. They don't have enough manpower, and they don't have review boards that can check on compliance of eligibility and maintain strict quality control of treatment. This means patients get better care here. Recently awarded the Juan A. Del Regato Foundation Gold Medal for Best Educator and Teacher, the higher education setting also allows Drive Komaki to share her knowledge with future innovators. I try ways to educate younger people, students and trainees, as well as patients to live healthy lives and achieve their goal to help others. Glossary. Leukemia, a type of cancer of the blood or bone marrow, sophisticated advance. Devastated, completely destroyed oncologist, a doctor who treats cancer, compliance, obedience. Innovator, one who introduces new ideas of things, think it out. 1. How did Hiroshima become a part of world history? 2. What are the 3 traumatic events of Ritsuko's childhood? 3. What were the results of these experiences for Ritsuko? 4. What is Dr. Komaki's specialization? 5. What is she famous for? 6. How do oncologists view proton radiation beam therapy? 7. Why does she prefer to work in a university? 8. Do you think she likes to teach? Why do you think so? 9. What is she more interested in, research and patient care or money? Why do you think so? 10. What is her mission in life? 11. Explain the meaning of this expression, she no longer fears it. Unit 2. Warm up. What is proton therapy? To know what it is, read the following unit of the text. The text. Proton therapy, like other forms of radiation, aims ionizing particles, in this case protons, onto a target tumor to damage and ultimately destroy its cancerous cells. But proton beams are much more localized and powerful than the X-rays used in more established radiation therapies. In the latter, the dosage is big enough to kill the cancerous cells, but some radiation also hits the healthy cells around the tumor. This can cause such side effects as pneumonitis, esophagitis and bone marrow toxicity, or lead to the growth of secondary cancers. To reduce damage to healthy tissues by a scattered dose of low radiation, the oncologist requires sharply delineated radiation, and proton beams are shaped to almost perfectly match the specific tumor and aim to strike it precisely. Collateral damage is thus minimal, making it feasible to hit the cancer with much bigger doses. In addition, photons, X-rays, release up to 90% of their cancer-fighting energy as they penetrate the skin, and lose 30% of it by the time they reach the tumor, meaning their overall effectiveness is reduced by 40%. They also exit out the rear of the tumor to further damage healthy tissues behind it. By controlling the speed with which it is shot into the body, the proton beam is calibrated to be at 30% of its maximum efficacy near the skin level while gathering full strength when it actually reaches the tumor and it barely exits the body at all. Komaki says the treatment is most recommended for those whose localized cancer has not spread to distant parts of the body. The success rate against prostate cancer, for example, is around 90 to 95%. But proton therapy succeeds against many of the 130 known forms of cancer. A recent study led by Komaki and her husband Drive James Cox, head of the Division of Radiation Oncology at UTM The Anderson Cancer Center shows that proton therapy, when used simultaneously with chemotherapy to treat lung cancer, causes significantly less damage to surrounding healthy cells than other forms of radiation. It's also particularly effective for children, because it causes little, if any, collateral damage to their still growing tissues and organs. Likewise, the elderly are strong candidates because tissues and organs surrounding their tumors are often too weak to withstand the more commonly employed radiation treatments. Dr. Komaki also stresses that the side effects are minimal, noting one patient who played a round of golf following each of his daily outpatient treatments. Patients think this is fabulous, she says. You know why? They rarely get sick from proton treatment itself. Are you sure you're giving me the treatment? They ask. It's amazing how much proton treatment they can tolerate compared to photon treatment. Glossary. Radiation therapy treatment of cancer by using radiation dosage medicinal dose. Toxicity the quality of being poisonous collateral damage injury to other organs. Calibrated measured. Efficacy effectiveness simultaneously at the same time fabulous very great think it out. 1. What is proton therapy? 2. What are the damaging side effects of photon therapy? 3. What are the advantages of proton therapy over photon therapy? 4. Do you think proton therapy is more effective at certain stages of cancer? 5. For what stage of cancer is proton therapy the most useful? 6. For which age groups is proton therapy the best? Why? 7. Why do her patients think proton therapy is fabulous? Unit 3. Warm up. Surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, and photon therapy were THA methods used for treating cancer before proton therapy was adopted. To know more about proton therapy, read the following unit of the text. The text. When she entered medical school in Hiroshima, Komaki was taught that surgery was the only viable cancer cure. But in the 1970s, while doing her internship, residency, and fellowship in Milwaukee, she began learning how radiation could cure people, and that gave it a different meaning to me than just the atomic bomb, she says. She came to VIEW localized radiation treatment as less harmful than chemotherapy, and realized that it couldn't be equated at all with the scattered, uncontrolled radiation to the whole body that comes with exposure to an atomic bomb. In 1985, she and Cox went to Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center in New York to work with Dr. Eric Hall, then a leading international authority on the effects of the atomic bomb on humans. In 1988, she began putting her years of research to work at UTM. D. Anderson. Though protons were discovered by Ernest Rutherford in 1919, proton therapy didn't commence until 1954, at Berkeley Nuclear Physics Labs. The Harvard Cyclotron Laboratory partnered with Massachusetts General Hospital to begin treating cancer patients in 1961. But the necessary technology is so expensive that treatment remained confined to physics research labs until 1990. That's when the Proton Treatment Center opened at Loma Linda University Medical Center in Southern California to offer the first hospital-based program. Intrigued by the proton therapy research then available, Komaki and Cox visited Loma Linda early on, and began to push for a similar unit at UTM. D. Anderson when they returned to Houston. Their efforts paid off in 2006, when the $125 million Proton Therapy Center opened its doors offering a complete range of proton treatments. It is the only such facility in the Southwest. In addition to Houston and Loma Linda, the nation now has centers in Florida, Indiana, and Massachusetts, with several more being planned. Today, Komaki and her colleagues treat thoracic malignancies therapy that requires a team of 7 doctors, several physicians and dosimetrists, and a couple dozen technicians in 10 to 15 patients daily, with 4 of them taking proton therapy. Like other radiation treatments, proton therapy runs about 7 weeks. In all, the Proton Therapy Center, with Dr. Andrew Lee, as medical director, treats 75 to 80 patients daily. To Komaki, this is just the beginning. Our physicists have already made a machine here that creates a scanning beam, she says. We are the only place in the world with a scanning beam, which means we can remove neutron contamination. Neutrons are created when protons enter the body, though it happens rarely. They can cause secondary malignancy a decade or more later. She also believes that proton therapy is extremely important to the future of cancer care. These patients are already sick from cancer, she says, why make them get sicker from treatment? Now, we can make them more comfortable killing cancer cells but not killing normal cells. Now, they can live a normal life while getting treatments. Whatever happens next in this field, drive. Ritsuko Komaki and her colleagues at UTM. D. Anderson are likely to be at the forefront. Glossary. Viable possible comments begin. Intrigued, interested to know more, dosimetrist expert in dosage of radiation. Secondary malignancy, a cancer that arises in the background of another malignancy. Think it out. 1. What different kinds of therapies were used for treating cancer before the use of proton therapy? 2. What did Komakis initially learn about treating cancer? 3. What did she learn about cancer treatment in the USA? 4. What two things did Komaki learn about radiation? 5. How did Komaki and her husband start proton therapy at Anderson Cancer Center? 6. When did proton therapy first start? 7. What is Komaki's opinion on proton therapy? Post-reading activities. Doing with words. We can know the meanings of words by looking up a dictionary and finding out how a word has been used in a text. In a dictionary, words come in alphabetical order. The main word is called head word. However, we should try to guess the meanings of words first from the context. That is the best way to learn new words. A. Match each word with its definition. Go back to the text for clues. B. Then, put the head words in alphabetical order. Head word definition. I. Radiation. A. Unexpected harmful side effects. C. Therapy. B. People who create something new. E. Clinical trial. C. Quality of being poisonous. IV. Innovators. D. Spread all over. V. Target. A. To enter inside something. Y. Collateral damage. F. The smallest part in our body. V. Oncologists. G. A form of energy that comes from nuclear reaction. V. Scattered dose. H. Scientific testing and assessment. X. Penetrate. I. Treatment. X. Cell. J. Doctors who treat cancer. She. Toxicity. K. Object to be hit. Behold the STR. Dr. James Cox, husband of Ritsuko Komaki. My greatest Olympic prize. Jesse Owens. Introducing the author. James Cleveland, Jesse Owens, 1913. 1980, was an American track and field athlete who specialized in sprints and long jump. He participated in the 1936 Summer Olympics in Berlin, Germany, where he achieved international fame by winning 4 gold medals, one each in the 100 meters, 200 meters, long jump, and as member of the 4x 100 meters relay race team. Unit I. Warm-up. The Olympic Games is the world's foremost sports competition featuring summer and winter sports, in which athletes from all over the world participate in a variety of competitions. In this essay, Jesse Owens shares his experiences of 1936 Summer Olympics held in Berlin when patriotic feelings were running high in Germany. However, Owens did not bother, as he trusted in his abilities. He tells his stunning story about forging a lasting friendship with a German, putting differences aside for the love of the games. Read the following unit of the text and note how Owens reacted to the performance of his rival. The text. It was the summer of 1936. The Olympic Games were being held in Berlin. Because Adolf Hitler childishly insisted that his performers were members of a master race, nationalistic feelings were at an all-time high. I wasn't too worried about all this. I trained, sweated, and disciplined myself for 6 years, with the games in mind. While I was going over on the boat, all I could think about was taking home one or two of those gold medals. I had my eye especially on the long jump. A year before, as a university student, I'd set the world record of 26 feet 8 and a quarter inches. Everyone kind of expected me to win that Olympic event hands down. I was in for a surprise. When the time came for the long jump trials, I was startled to see a tall boy hitting the pit at almost 26 feet on his practice leaps. He turned out to be a German named Luz Long. I was told that Hitler had kept him under wraps, evidently hoping he would win the jump. I supposed that if Long won, it would add some new support to the Nazis' Aryan superiority theory. After all, I am a Negro. A little hot under the collar about Hitler's ways, I determined to go out there and really show the Führer and his master race who was superior and who wasn't. Glossary. Performers, here competitors, athletes. Master race superior to all other races, Hitler's Nazi theory. Claimed that the Aryan race is a master race 26 feet 8 and a quarter inches, 8.13 meters. 26 feet, 7.9 meters. Win, hands down, win, with little or no effort, startled, greatly shocked and surprised, and a rap's secret. Nazis, members of Hitler's the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP. Aryan superiority theory, the theory that Germans, who are the Aryans, are superior to all other peoples. Der Führer, the leader in German, used almost exclusively as the epithet for Hitler. Think it out. 1. Why were nationalistic feelings running high during the 1936 Summer Olympics in Berlin? 2. I wasn't too worried about all thus. What does this refer to, Hitler's beliefs or winning a gold medal? 3. Why wasn't Owens worried? 4. Why did everyone expect Owens to win the long jump easily? 5. What was the surprise that awaited Jesse Owens in Berlin? 6. What did he learn from people about Luz Long? 7. Do you think Nazis' Aryan superiority theory meant that Germans were superior to Negroes? How did Owens feel about it, angry or bothered? 8. What made Owens determined to beat Luz Long? Unit 2. Warm up. Anger is the worst enemy of an athlete. Read the following unit of the text and find out how Owens suffered for his anger, and who bailed him out. The text. An angry athlete is an athlete who will make mistakes, as any coach will tell you. I was no exception. On the first of my 3 qualifying jumps, I leapt from several inches beyond the takeoff board for a no jump. On the second jump, I was even worse. Did I come 3,000 miles for this? I thought bitterly. To fail in the trials and make a fool of myself. Walking a few yards from the pit, I kicked disgustedly at the ground. Suddenly I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to look into the friendly blue eyes of the tall German long jumper. He had easily qualified for the finals on his first attempt. He offered me a firm handshake. Jesse Owens, I'm Luz Long. I don't think we've met. He spoke English well, though with a German twist to it. Glad to meet you, I said. Then, trying to hide my nervousness, I added, how are you? I'm fine. The question is, how are you? What do you mean? I asked. Something must be eating you, he said, proud the way foreigners are when they've mastered a bit of American slang. You should be able to qualify with your eyes closed. Believe me, I know it, I told him, and it felt good to say that to someone. For the next few minutes, we talked together. I didn't tell Long what was eating me, but he seemed to understand my anger, and he took pains to reassure me. Although he'd been schooled in the Nazi youth movement, he didn't believe in the Aryan supremacy business any more than I did. We laughed over the fact that he really looked the part, though. An inch taller than I, he had a lean, muscular frame, clear blue eyes, fair hair, and a strikingly handsome face. Finally, seeing that I had calmed down somewhat, he pointed to the takeoff board. Look, he said. Why don't you draw a line a few inches at the back of the board and aim at making your takeoff from there? You'll be sure not to foul, and you certainly ought to jump far enough to qualify. What does it matter if you're not first in the trials? Tomorrow is what counts. Suddenly all the tension seemed to ebb out of my body as the truth of what he said hit me. Confidently, I drew a line a full foot behind the board and proceeded to jump from there. I qualified with almost a foot to spare. Glossary. Eating agitating disgustedly with a strong feeling of dislike. Reassure to say something to make somebody less frightened. Think it out. 1. What does a coach say about an angry athlete? 2. What were the results of the first 2 qualifying jumps for Owens? 3. Why did Owens kick the pit? 4. Who offered Owens a firm handshake? Was he friendly or hostile? 5. Why did Long speak to Owens during the trials? Did he mean to mark a friendship with Owens or to find out what was troubling him? 6. He really looked the part. What does this mean? Does it mean Long was trying to play the part of an Aryan, or he looked as if he belonged to a superior race? 7. How did Luz Long help Jesse Owens in qualifying for the final jumps? 8. Tomorrow is what counts. What did Long mean by this? Does he mean that Owens would win the next day, or their performance the next day would matter much? 9. Did Owens qualify for the final jump? How did he do that? Unit 3. Warm up. Do you believe in the adage, a friend in need is a friend indeed? Read the following unit of the text and note how Owens and Luz Long became good friends. The text. That night I walked over to Luz Long's room in the Olympic village to thank him. I knew that if it hadn't been for him I probably wouldn't be jumping in the finals the following day. We sat in his quarters and talked for 2 hours about track and field, ourselves, the world's situation, and a dozen other things. When I finally got up to leave, we both knew that a real friendship had been formed. Luz would go out to the field the next day trying to beat me if he could. But I knew that he wanted me to do my best even if that meant my winning. As it turned out, Luz broke his own past record. In doing so, he pushed me onto a peak performance. I remember that at the instant I landed from my final jump, the one which set the Olympic record of 26 feet 5 1/4 inches, he was at my side, congratulating me. Despite the fact that Hitler glared at us from the stands not 100 yards away, Luz shook my hand hard, and it wasn't a fake smile with a broken heart sort of grip either. You could melt down all the gold medals and cups I have, and they wouldn't be a plating on the 24-carat friendship I felt for Luz Long at that moment. I realized then, too, that Luz was the epitome of what Pierre de Coubertin, founder of the modern Olympic Games, must have had in mind when he said, "The important thing in the Olympic Games is not winning but taking part. The essential thing in life is not conquering but fighting well." Glossary. Peak performance. Best ever performance. 26 feet 5 1/4 inches, 8.06 meters, 24-carat friendship. Genuine friendship. Plating. A thin coating. Epitome. A perfect example. Think it out. 1. When did Owens and Long realize that they had become friends? 2. Who was Coubertin? What was his ideal? 3. Why has Luz Long been called a fine example of Coubertin's ideal? 4. What do you think was the greatest Olympic prize for Jesse Owens, the gold medal he won in long jump, or the friendship he formed with Luz Long? Post-reading activities. Doing with words. A. Childish is an adjective. We can make it an adverb by adding lie childishly. Now add lie to make the following adjectives adverbs: easy, real, bitter, disgusted, clear, physical, friend, final, certain, sudden. B. Replace the italicized words in each of the following sentences with idiomatic expressions given in brackets. An all-time high, hands down, under wraps, hot under the collar, look the part. I. The plan was carefully kept secret. E. Tendulkar's double century is the highest ever individual score in a one-day cricket match. E. You'd never guess he was a security guard, he doesn't appear to be suited to the job. IV. Delhi Daredevils won the IPL Cup very easily. V. The policeman was very angry because the criminal escaped. C. Make sentences of your own using the following expressions. I. Make a fool of oneself. E. Have one's eye on E. To be in for a surprise. IV. About. V. No exception. Behold the STRs. Adolf Hitler, the 20th of April 1889, the 30th of April 1945, a decorated veteran of World War I, was the Chancellor of Germany from 1933 to 1945 and dictator of Nazi Germany from 1934 to 1945. Hitler is commonly associated with the rise of fascism in Europe, World War II, and the Holocaust. Luz Long and Jesse Owens. Pierre de Freddy, Baron de Coubert, the 1st of January 1863, the 2nd of September 1937, was a French educationalist and historian, founder of the International Olympic Committee, and is considered the father of the modern Olympic Games. On examinations. Winston S. Churchill. Introducing the author. Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, 1874. 1965 was the Prime Minister of England twice, 1940-45 and 1951-55. A noted statesman and orator, Churchill was also an officer in the British Army, a historian, a writer, and an artist. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1953. At Harrow is an excerpt from Chapter 2, Harrow, of Winston S. Churchill's autobiography, A Roving Commission, My Early Life, 1930. Unit I. Warm-up. Examinations, for many, are not a pleasant experience. The apprehension of not doing well makes even bright students anxious. Read the following unit of the text and note how the writer took his entrance examination to Harrow. The text. I had scarcely passed my 12th birthday when I entered the inhospitable regions of examinations, through which for the next 7 years I was destined to journey. These examinations were a great trial to me. The subjects which were dearest to the examiners were almost invariably those I fancied least. I would have liked to have been examined in history, poetry, and writing essays. The examiners, on the other hand, were partial to Latin and mathematics. And their will prevailed. Moreover, the questions which they asked on both these subjects were almost invariably those to which I was unable to suggest a satisfactory answer. I should have liked to be asked to say what I knew. They always tried to ask what I did not know. When I would have willingly displayed my knowledge, they sought to expose my ignorance. This sort of treatment had only one result: I did not do well in examinations. This was especially true of my entrance examination to Harrow. The headmaster, Drive Weldon, however, took a broad-minded view of my Latin prose. He showed discernment in judging my general ability. This was the more remarkable, because I was found unable to answer a single question in the Latin paper. I wrote my name at the top of the page. I wrote down the number of the question I. After much reflection, I put a bracket round it, thus I. But thereafter I could not think of anything connected with it that was either relevant or true. Incidentally, there arrived from nowhere in particular a blot and several smudges. I gazed for 2 whole hours at the sad spectacle, and then merciful ushers collected my piece of foolscap with all the others and carried it up to the headmaster's table. It was from these slender indications of scholarship that Dr. Weldon drew the conclusion that I was worthy to pass into Harrow. It is very much to his credit. It showed that he was a man capable of looking beneath the surface of things, a man not dependent upon paper manifestations. I have always had the greatest regard for him. In consequence of his decision, I was in due course placed in the 3rd, or lowest, division of the 4th, or bottom, form. The names of the new boys were printed in the school list in alphabetical order, and as my correct name, Spencer Churchill, began with an S, I gained no more advantage from the alphabet than from the wider sphere of letters. I was in fact only two from the bottom of the whole school, and these two, I regret to say, disappeared almost immediately through illness or some other cause. The Harrow custom of calling the roll is different from that of Eton. At Eton, the boys stand in a cluster and lift their hats when their names are called. At Harrow, they file past a master in the schoolyard and answer one by one. My position was therefore revealed in its somewhat invidious humility. It was the year 1887. Lord Randolph Churchill had only just resigned his position as leader of the House of Commons and Chancellor of the Exchequer, and he still towered in the forefront of politics. In consequence, large numbers of visitors of both sexes used to wait on the school steps, in order to see me march by, and I frequently heard the irreverent comment, "Why, he's last of all." Glossary. Inhospitable, unfriendly, invariably, always, incidentally, by the way. Harrow, an English public school for boys in the town of Harrow, in northwest London. Blot and smudges, drops of his tears have made stains on paper. Spectacle sight. Usher, attendant, discernment, judgment. The third division of the 4th 3rd section of Standard IV. Invidious humility, unenviable humbleness. Lord Randolph Churchill, the father of W. Instant Churchill. Irreverent comment, disrespectful remark. Think it out. 1. Does the writer like examinations? Quote the line in support of your answer. 2. Mention the subjects that were dearest to the examiners. 3. Which subjects did the writer like the most? 4. What reason does the writer give for his not doing well in the examinations? 5. What did the writer write in the answer book for the Latin paper? 6. What was the sad spectacle for him? 7. What was the writer's position in the merit list for admission? 8. Whom does he give the credit of his success in the entrance examination? Why? 9. What does he mean by "I gained no more advantage from the alphabet than from the wider sphere of letters"? 10. How did he become the last boy in the class? 11. What is the custom of calling the roll at Harrow? 12. What is the custom of calling the roll at Eton? 13. Why, he's last of all, why did people say so? Unit 2. Warm up. Think of the role of a teacher in a student's life. Doesn't a teacher facilitate the learning of a pupil and develop skills in him/her? Read the following unit of the text and note the role played by Mr. Somerville in the W. Writer's Education at Harrow. The text. I continued in this unpretentious situation for nearly a year. However, by being so long in the lowest form, I gained an immense advantage over the cleverer boys. They all went on to learn Latin and Greek and splendid things like that. But I was taught English. We were considered such dunces that we could learn only English. Mr. Somerville, a most delightful man, to whom my debt is great, was charged with the duty of teaching the stupidest boys the most disregarded thing, namely, to write mere English. He knew how to do it. He taught it as no one else has ever taught it. Not only did we learn English parsing thoroughly, but we also practiced continually English analysis. Mr. Somerville had a system of his own. He took a fairly long sentence and broke it up into its components by means of black, red, blue, and green inks. Subject, verb, object, relative clauses, conditional clauses, conjunctive and disjunctive clauses. Each had its color and its bracket. It was a kind of drill. WA did it almost daily. As I remained in the third, fourth 3 times as long as anyone else, I had 3 times as much of it. I learned it thoroughly. Thus I got into my bones the essential structure of the ordinary British sentence, which is a noble thing. And when in after years my schoolfellows who had won prizes and distinction for writing such beautiful Latin poetry and pithy Greek epigrams had to come down again to common English, to earn their living or make their way, I did not feel myself at any disadvantage. Naturally, I am biased in favor of boys learning English. I would make them all learn English, and then I would let the clever ones learn Latin as an honor, and Greek as a treat. But the only thing I would whip them for would be for not knowing English. I would whip them hard for that. Glossary. Unpretentious situation, modest situation, dunce, slow learner. Disregarded thing treated as unimportant. Parsing, grammar, dividing a sentence into parts and describe the grammar of each word, part pithy brief. Epigram, short and witty expression make their way, succeed in life, treat special pleasure, think it out. 1. What kind of students were taught Latin and Greek at Harrow? 2. Which students were taught only English? 3. How does the writer rate English as a subject and Mr. Somerville as a teacher? 4. What part of the English grammar did he learn from Mr. Somerville? 5. How did he score over the clever schoolfellows in after years? 6. Why was he biased in favor of boys learning English language? Unit 3. Warm up. Aren't students at school fun-loving? Do young students play pranks with their schoolfellows? Read the following unit of the text and note how the writer describes a funny incident he was involved with at school. The text. I first went to Harrow in the summer term. The school possessed the biggest swimming bath I had ever seen. It was more like the bend of a river than a bath, and it had 2 bridges across it. Thither we used to repair for hours at a time and bask between our dips, eating enormous buns on the hot asphalt margin. Naturally, it was a good joke to come up behind some naked friend, or even enemy, and push him in. I made quite a habit of this with boys of my own size or less. One day, when I had been no more than a month in the school, I saw a boy standing in a meditative posture wrapped in a towel on the very brink. He was no bigger than I was, so I thought him fair game. Coming stealthily behind, I pushed him in, holding on to his towel out of humanity, so that it should not get wet. I was led to see a furious face emerge from the foam, and a being evidently of enormous strength making its way by fierce strokes to the shore. I fled, but in vain. Swift as the wind, my pursuer overtook me, seized me in a ferocious grip, and hurled me into the deepest part of the pool. I soon scrambled out on the other side, and found myself surrounded by an agitated crowd of younger boys. "You're in for it," they said. "Do you know what you have done? It's a Mary, he's in the 6th form. He is head of his house, he is champion at gym, he has got his football colors." They continued to recount his many titles to fame and reverence, and to dilate upon the awful retribution that would fall upon me. I was convulsed not only with terror, but with the guilt of sacrilege. How could I tell his rank when he was in a bath towel and so small? I determined to apologize immediately. I approached the potentate in lively trepidation. "I'm very sorry," I said. "I mistook you for a 4th form boy. You are so small." He did not seem at all placated by this, so I added in a most brilliant recovery, "My father, who is a great man, is also small." At this he laughed, and after some general remarks about my cheek, and how I had better be careful in the future, signified that the incident was closed. Glossary. Repair for hours, go in large numbers, meditative posture, thoughtful position. Scramble out, to come out as quickly as possible, recount, narrate. Reverence, respect. Dilate upon, to speak about a subject for a long time, awful retribution, fearful punishment. Convulsed, shaking violently, guilt of sacrilege, unhappy feeling for doing something wrong or sinful, potentate, a person who possesses great power, trepidation, a state of alarm or dread, placate, to make somebody feel less angry, cheek, impoliteness. Think it out. 1. How did the boys enjoy their time at the swimming bath? 2. What kind of pranks did they enjoy at the bath? 3. What did the writer do to the boy standing in a meditative posture? 4. What was the reaction of the boy? 5. What did the writer learn about Mary from the crowd of younger boys? 6. How did the writer apologize for his misconduct? 7. Did he apologize out of fear or guilt, or both? 8. Did the matter end happily for the writer? Unit IV. Warm up. Isn't preparation for an examination very much painstaking? Children adopt many peculiar ways to face an examination. Read the following unit of the text and note how the writer makes his preparation for the preliminary examination for the Army. The text. I have been fortunate to see a good deal more of him, in times when 3 years difference in age is not so important as it is at school. We were afterwards to be cabinet colleagues for a good many years. It was thought incongruous that while I apparently stagnated in the lowest form, I should gain a prize open to the whole school for reciting to the headmaster 1200 lines of Macaulay's Lays of Ancient Rome, without making a single mistake. I also succeeded in passing the preliminary examination for TE Army while still almost at the bottom of the school. This examination seemed to have called forth a very special effort on my part, for many boys far above me in the school failed in it. I also had a piece of good luck. We knew that among other case studies we should be asked to draw from memory a map of some country or other. The night before, by way of final preparation, I put the names of all the maps in the atlas into a hat and drew out New Zealand. I applied my good memory to the geography of that dominion. Sure enough, the first question in the paper was, draw a map of New Zealand. This was what is called at Monte Carlo an N-pline, and I ought to have been paid 35 times my stake. However, I certainly got paid very high marks for my paper. Glossary. Monte Carlo, a French town, famous for its casinos and N-pline, of a gambling bet placed entirely on a single number. Think it out. 1. 3 years difference in age is not so important as it is at school. How does the writer prove it? 2. How did the writer fare at school? 3. How did he win a prize at school? 4. What was the writer's noteworthy achievements at school? 5. How did the writer prepare himself for the preliminary examination for the Army? 6. Why does he call his success an N-pline? Post-reading activities. A. Parsing, in English grammar, is the lost art of identifying all the components of a text. It was once one of the fundamental exercises that tested and informed pupils in English. Parsing requires a student to break down a sentence into its component words, classifying each in terms of its part of speech, number, person, as well as its tense, voice, and function in the sentence. For example, sentence carelessness causes accidents. Parsing carelessness, a singular noun and the subject of the sentence, causes a regular transitive verb, active voice, simple present tense, third person singular, accidents, a plural noun, object of the sentence. Parse the following simple sentences. I. Children love toys. E. Flowers bloom on trees. E. Boys are playing cricket. IV. Sachin has won a gold medal. V. Money has been spent. B. Clause analysis is a technique of formal grammatical analysis once common in schools in English-speaking countries. It involves the division of longer sentences into their constituent clauses. A clause is a part of a sentence with a finite verb. A complex sentence has two kinds of clauses, principal clause and subordinate clauses. Principal clause, a clause which makes complete sense and can stand by itself. Subordinate clause, a clause which depends on the principal clause for complete sense. Study the following examples carefully. A. We know that a little learning is a dangerous thing. We know, principal clause, that a little learning is a dangerous thing, subordinate clause. B. People who live in glass houses should not throw stones at others. People should not throw stones at others, principal clause, who live in glass houses, subordinate clause. C. It rained when the players were ready to play. It rained, principal clause, when the players were ready to play, subordinate clause. Identify the subordinate clauses in the following sentences. I had scarcely passed my 12th birthday when I entered the inhospitable regions of examinations, through which for the next 7 years I was destined to journey. E. The subjects which were dearest to the examiners were almost invariably those I fancied least. E. We were considered such dunces that we could learn only English. IV. One day when I had been no more than a month in the school, I saw a boy standing in a meditative posture wrapped in a towel on the very brink. V. It was thought incongruous that while I apparently stagnated in the lowest form, I should gain a prize open to the whole school for reciting to the headmaster 1200 lines of Macaulay's Lays of Ancient Rome, without making a single mistake. Behold the star. Leopold Ameri, 1873-1955, was born in Gorakhpur, India to an English father and a Hungarian mother. He was a British Conservative Party politician and journalist, noted for his interest in military preparedness and India. He was the Secretary of State for India in Churchill's cabinet. The Portrait of a Lady. Khushwant Singh. Introducing the author. Khushwant Singh, born the 2nd of February 1915, is a prominent Indian English writer and journalist. His weekly column, With Malice Towards One and All, carried by several Indian newspapers, is among the most widely read columns. He is well known in Indian literary history as one of the finest historians and novelists, a forthright political commentator, an outstanding observer and a critic of social life. Unit I. Warm up. Do you enjoy your grandparents' company? Are they good companions? Children grow up with a typical image of their grandparents in their minds. Any other thought is almost revolting to them. Read the following unit of the text carefully and note how the writer portrays his grandmother. The text. My grandmother, like everybody's grandmother, was an old woman. She had been old and wrinkled for the 20 years that I had known her. People said that she had once been young and pretty and had even had a husband, but that was hard to believe. My grandaf Athos portrait hung above the mantelpiece in the drawing room. He wore a big turban and loose-fitting clothes. His long white beard covered the best part of his chest and he looked at least 100 years old. He did not look the sort of person who would have a wife or children. He looked as if he could only have lots and lots of grandchildren. As for my grandmother being young and pretty, the thought was almost revolting. She often told us of the games she used to play as a child. That seemed quite absurd and undignified on her part, and we treated it like the fables of the prophets she used to tell us. She had always been short and fat and slightly bent. Her face was a criss-cross of wrinkles running from everywhere to everywhere. No, we were sutter in she had always been, as we had known her. Old, so terribly old that she could not have grown older, and had stayed at the same age for 20 years. She could never have been pretty, but she was always beautiful. She hobbled about the house in spotless white with one hand resting on her waist to balance her stoop and the other telling the beads of her rosary. Her silver locks were scattered untidily over her pale, puckered face, and her lips constantly moved in inaudible prayer. Yes, she was beautiful. She was like the winter landscape in the mountains, an expanse of pure white serenity breathing peace and contentment. Glossary. Mantelpiece, a shelf. Portrait, a painting, drawing or photograph of a person, absurd, not logical and sensible. Undignified, not respectable, the prophets, the saints. Pretty, attractive without being very beautiful, serenity, calmness. Contentment, satisfaction, think it out. 1. Why was it hard for the author to believe that his grandmother was once young and pretty? 2. How did the grandfather appear in his portrait? 3. What sort of a person did he look in his portrait? 4. How does the author portray his grandmother? 5. Why does he say the thought was almost revolting? 6. The grandmother had a divine beauty. How does the author bring this out? Unit 2. Warm up. Grandmothers are generally affectionate, protective, and caring. Read the following unit of the text and note how the writer's grandmother looked after him in their village during his childhood. The text. My grandmother and I were good friends. My parents left me with her when they went to live in the city and we were constantly together. She used to wake me up in the morning and get me ready for school. She said her morning prayer in a monotonous sing-song while she bathed and dressed me in the hope that I would listen and get to know it by heart. I listened because I loved her voice but never bothered to learn it. Then she would fetch my wooden slate which she had already washed and plastered with yellow chalk, a tiny earthen ink pot and a reed pen, tie them all in a bundle and hand it to me. After a breakfast of a thick, stale chapati with a little butter and sugar spread on it, we went to school. She carried several stale chapatis with her for the village dogs. My grandmother always went to school with me because the school was attached to the temple. The priest taught us the alphabet and the morning prayer. While the children sat in rows on either side of the veranda singing the alphabet or the prayer in a chorus, my grandmother sat inside reading the scriptures. When we had both finished, we would walk back together. This time the village dogs would meet us at the temple door. They followed us to our home growling and fighting with each other for the chapatis we threw to them. Glossary. Monotonous, boring scriptures, holy books. Think it out. 1. What was the grandmother's routine in the village? 2. How did the grandmother take care of the writer during his childhood? Was she a good companion of the writer in the village? 3. What lessons did the writer learn from the village priest? 4. How did the grandmother spend her time at the temple? 5. Was she a religious person? How? Unit 3. Warm up. Life in the village is quite different from city life. Family relationship also changes. Identities are modified. There is a turning point in relationships. Read the following unit of the text and note how a turning point occurs in the writer's relationship with his grandmother. The text. When my parents were comfortably settled in the city, they sent for us. That was a turning point in our friendship. Although we shared the same room, my grandmother no longer came to school with me. I used to go to an English school in a motor bus. There were no dogs in the streets and she took to feeding sparrows in the courtyard of our city house. As the years rolled by, we saw less of each other. For some time she continued to wake me up and get me ready for school. When I came back, she would ask me what the teacher had taught me. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science and learning, the law of gravity, Archimedes' principle, the world being round, etc. This made her unhappy. She could not help me with my lessons. She did not believe in the things they taught at the English school and was distressed that there was no teaching about God and the scriptures. One day I announced that we were being given music lessons. She was very disturbed. To her, music had lewd associations. It was the monopoly of harlots and beggars and not meant for gentlefolk. She said nothing but her silence meant disapproval. She rarely talked to me after that. When I went up to university, I was given a room of my own. The common link of friendship was snapped. My grandmother accepted her seclusion with resignation. She rarely left her spinning wheel to talk to anyone. From sunrise to sunset she sat by her wheel spinning and reciting prayers. Only in the afternoon she relaxed for a while to feed the sparrows. She sat in the veranda breaking the bread into little bits. Hundreds of little birds collected round her, creating a veritable bedlam of chirrupings. Some came and perched on her legs, others on her shoulders. Some even sat on her head. She smiled but never shooed them away. It used to be the happiest half hour of the day for her. Glossary. Lewd, vulgar. Bedlam, a scene full of noise and confusion, chaos. A veritable bedlam of chirrupings, a genuine scene of noise or confusions caused by the chirruping of the sparrows which scattered and perched around the author's grandmother. Think it out. 1. Why didn't the grandmother accompany the writer to school in the city? 2. Why couldn't the grandmother help the writer with his lessons at the city school? 3. Why did the lessons at the English school distress the grandmother? 4. Why was she disturbed about music lessons at the English school? 5. What were the 3 ways in which the grandmother spent her days when the author went to university? 6. What was the happiest time of the day for her? 7. How did she accept her seclusion? Unit IV. Warm up. You are already acquainted with the first three phases of the author's relationship with his grandmother. In the first phase, the grandmother looked after the author in the village and he was physically very close to her. In the second phase, he was estranged from her when he went to city school. In the third phase, the common link of friendship between them snapped when he went to university. Finally, when he went abroad for further studies, the last sign of physical contact between them was lost. Read the concluding part of the text and note how the final curtain falls in the grandmother's life. The text. When I decided to go abroad for further studies, I was sure my grandmother would be upset. I would be away for 5 years, and at her age one could never tell. But my grandmother could. She was not even sentimental. She came to leave me at the railway station but did not talk or show any emotion. Her lips moved in prayer, her mind was lost in prayer. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of her rosary. Silently she kissed my forehead, and when I left, I cherished the moist imprint as perhaps the last sign of physical contact between us. But that was not so. After 5 years I came back home and was met by her at the station. She did not look a day older. She still had no time for words, and while she clasped me in her arms, I could hear her reciting her prayer. Even on the first day of my arrival, her happiest moments were with her sparrows whom she fed longer and with frivolous rebukes. In the evening, a change came over her. She did not pray. She collected the women of the neighborhood, got an old drum and started to sing. For several hours she thumped the sagging skins of the dilapidated drum and sang of the homecoming of warriors. We had to persuade her to stop to avoid overstraining. That was the first time since I had known her that she did not pray. The next morning she was taken ill. It was a mild fever and the doctor told us that it would go. But my grandmother thought differently. She told us that her end was near. She said that, since only a few hours before the close of the last chapter of her life she had omitted to pray, she was not going to waste any more time talking to us. We protested. But she ignored our protests. She lay peacefully in bed praying and telling her beads. Even before we could suspect, her lips stopped moving and the rosary fell from her lifeless fingers. A peaceful pallor spread on her face and we knew that she was dead. We lifted her off the bed and, as is customary, laid her on the ground and covered her with a red shroud. After a few hours of mourning we left her alone to make arrangements for her funeral. In the evening, we went to her room with a crude stretcher to take her to be cremated. The sun was setting and had lit her room and veranda with a blaze of golden light. We stopped halfway in the courtyard. All over the veranda and in her room right up to where she lay dead and stiff wrapped in the red shroud, thousands of sparrows sat scattered on the floor. There was no chirruping. We felt sorry for the birds and my mother fetched some bread for them. She broke it into little crumbs, the way my grandmother used to, and threw it to them. The sparrow took no notice of the bread. When we carried my grandmother's corpse off, they flew away quietly. Next morning the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. Glossary. Sentimental, easily moved by tender feelings, cherish, keep a pleasant feeling in mind for a long time, frivolous rebukes, affectionate scolding. Dilapidated, old and in very bad condition, customary, typical of a particular place, think it out. 1. How did the grandmother see the author off at the railway station? 2. How did she receive him when he came back home from abroad? 3. What were her happiest moments on the first day of his arrival? 4. How did she celebrate his return in the evening? Does her behavior appear odd to you? 5. How did she pass away? 6. How did sparrows react when the author's grandmother died? 7. Next morning the sweeper swept the breadcrumbs into the dustbin. What does this line imply? Post-reading activities. Write a paragraph on the following points to portray the character of the grandmother. The writer's grandmother is a widow. She has very old wrinkled face. Her grey hair usually remains scattered on her puckered face, fat, short and has a stoop, cannot walk straight, hobbles with hand on her waist to balance her stoop. She belongs to a Punjabi family and lives with her son, daughter-in-law and her grandson. She is religious, goes to the temple daily, reads holy books, tells the beads of the rosary. She is very kind, feeds the dogs with chapatis, feeds the sparrows and enjoys their company. She is a good companion, helps her grandson to get ready for school, helps him in his lessons, accompanies him to the school. She is culture loving, loves Indian culture, fond of singing and spinning, has a strong dislike for Western and scientific education. She is peaceful by nature, calm and cool, does not show resentment, becomes quiet and private instead. Her death is mourned by the family and her pet sparrows. Doing with words. A. Make sentences with the following expressions. I. The thought was almost revolting. E. An expanse of pure white serenity. E. A veritable bedlam of chirruping ivy. Frivolous rebukes. V. The sagging skins of the dilapidated drum. B. Notice the following uses of the word tell in the text. 1. Her fingers were busy telling the beads of her rosary. 2. I would tell her English words and little things of Western science and learning. 3. At her age one could never tell. 4. She told us that her end was near. Given below are 4 different meanings of the word tell. Match each meaning with its corresponding sentence given above. 1. Make something known to someone in spoken or written odds. 2. Count while reciting. 3. Be sure. 4. Give information to somebody. See, a popular dictionary gives the following meanings for the word drop. Match each meaning with its corresponding sentence given below. Drop. 1. A small round mass of liquid. 2. A reduction. 3. To fall. 4. To become weaker. 5. To send a letter. Sentences. 8. The bottle dropped and broke to pieces. B. Drop a postcard to me about your choice of a career. C. A heavy shower of rain caused a drop in temperature. D. She shed a few drops of tears on the grave of her pet. A. His voice dropped to a whisper. The magic of teamwork. Sam Pitroda. Introducing the author. The father of India's communication revolution, Satyanarayan Gangaram Pitroda, or Dr. Sam Pitroda as he is better known, was born in Titlagad, Odisha in 1942. Dr. Pitroda is presently the chairman of India's National Knowledge Commission, besides being the chairman and CEO of the World Tel Limited and the founder and CEO of CSAM, Inc. He also worked as an advisor to the United Nations in 1992. The essay is adapted from Sam Pitroda's article The Magic of Teamwork. Unit I. Warm-up. The Magic of Teamwork presents an insightful overview of proven principles that organizations can employ to build a winning team in their business. In this essay, the author also discusses the fundamental issues related to teamwork, the characteristics of a good team player, and how teamwork is key to corporate and national governance. Read the following unit of the text and note how the author makes a comparison between Indian and Japanese workers in the corporate world in their attitude to work. The text. Lack of teamwork and cooperation is one of the most serious problems affecting progress in all areas of India and wherever Indians work worldwide. The key problem in India is always implementation, not lack of policies. We have great policies and ideas about how to do things, but we severely lack teamwork. When the Japanese came to work in India to develop the Maruti Suzuki car, a joke went around that one Indian was equal to 10 Japanese. Indians were very smart, capable and dedicated individuals. But 10 Indians were equal to 1 Japanese. Indians lacked team spirit and cooperation. What makes matters even worse is our crab mentality. If someone is trying to climb higher and achieve more, the others just drag him down. The signal that the others send out is, I wouldn't do it, I wouldn't let you do it, and if by chance you start succeeding, we will all gang up and make sure that you don't get to do it. The question is, where does this attitude come from, and how do we recognize and handle it? Part of the problem is our cultural background. We've had feudal and a hierarchical social system in which whoever is senior supposedly knows the best. This was fine in earlier times when knowledge and wisdom were passed on orally, but in modern society, there is no way that one person can know everything. Today, you may find that a young computer-trained person has more answers for an accounting problem than a senior accountant has. Until we understand how best to leverage this diversity of experience, we will not be able to create and fully utilize the right kind of teams. Glossary. Implementation execution. Gang up to join together in a group dedicated committed. Crab mentality. The metaphor refers to a pot of crabs. Individually, the crabs could easily escape from the pot, but instead, they grab at each other in a useless competition, which prevents any from escaping. Similarly, human beings in a group attempt to pull down any member who achieves success beyond others out of envy. Hierarchy. A system of persons or things arranged in a graded order leverage we to use a quality or advantage to obtain a desired effect or result. Think it out. 1. What is the key problem affecting India's progress? Lack of policies or lack of implementation or lack of teamwork? 2. What is the joke about the Indian and Japanese workers at the Maruti Suzuki company? 3. What is the crab mentality? 4. Where does root of the crab mentality lie? 5. What is the demerit of a hierarchical social system? 6. How can the right kind of TMS be created? Unit 2. Warm up. Have you got any idea of corporate hierarchy? It is the arrangement of individuals within a corporation according to power, status, and job function. Study the following theoretical corporate hierarchy structure. A. Shareholders. B. Board of directors, led by its chairman, who may be CEO, C. CEO, Chief Executive Officer, Chairman. D. COO, Chief Operating Officer, President. E. Executive Vice Presidents. F. Vice Presidents. G. General Managers. H. Managers. I. Supervisors. J. Workers. Read the following unit of the text and experience how hierarchy practically works in corporate sector. The text. In my younger days in the US, I attended an executive seminar for Rockwell International, where about 25 Saint Air company executives had congregated for a week for strategic discussion. In the evenings, we would break out into 5 different groups of 5 people each. In those group workshops, someone would delegate tasks, saying, "You make coffee, you take notes, you are the chairman, and you clean the board." The next day, there would be different duties for each group member. No one ever said, "But I made coffee twice or I cleaned the board entire day." I thought to myself, if this were happening in India, People would be saying, "But I'm the senior secretary, why should I make the coffee and you be the chairman?" Hierarchy comes naturally to our minds. Group work requires a thorough understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of individuals irrespective of their hierarchy. Because of our background, we often don't learn how to exercise and accept leadership to lead and to follow simultaneously. Some gravitate toward exercising leadership, and others gravitate toward accepting the lead of others. But in true teamwork, everyone needs to do both. Being a good team player implies respect for others, tolerance of different points of view, and willingness to give. The ability to resolve conflicts without either egotism or sycophancy is a very important aspect of being a team player. You have to agree to disagree. I find that people in India somehow tend to focus on achieving total agreement, which is almost always impossible. So before work begins, people want everyone to agree on everything. Instead, they should say, "Okay, this is what we agree on, so let's start working on this. What we don't agree on, we will resolve as we go along." For things to move forward, it's important to work on the agreed upon aspects and not get bogged down in the areas of disagreement. Yet another snake that kills teamwork is people's political agendas. You've got to be open, clear, and honest to be a good team player. Most people have a hidden agenda, they say something but mean the exact opposite. I call it split level consciousness. To say and mean the same thing is a very critical part of a good work ethic. Glossary. Congregate, we, to come together in a group. Rockwell International, a major American manufacturing corporation. Strategic discussion done as a part of a plan for a particular purpose. Delegate, we, hand over simultaneously at the same time. Gravitate, we, to move towards somebody or something that you are attracted to. Conflicts, differences. Egotism, arrogance, lack of consideration for others. Sycophancy, flattery, praising a person too high for selfish gain. Split level consciousness, dual personality. Think it out. 1. If this were happening in India, what does the author mean by this? 2. How does hierarchy come in the way of doing a task together in India? 3. What should the members of a team learn for effective teamwork? 4. Should the members of a team exercise leadership only or accept the lead of others only in true teamwork? 5. Who is a good team player? 6. Is total agreement on a conflicting issue possible? 7. Which is important for beginning a piece of work, to begin work on the agreed upon aspects or to wait for total agreement? 8. What are the qualities of a good team player? 9. What does the author mean by a hidden agenda? How does it affect teamwork? 10. What does a good work ethic imply? Unit 3. Warm up. Why do people criticize an individual? Does the individual feel good about it? How do you feel if someone finds faults with you? Do people criticize an idea out of goodwill or envy? Does criticism help the idea as well as the person who has offered it? Read the following unit of the text and try to find out how a person feels when you criticize his/her idea. The text. When I was working in C.400 employee size company, if someone had not been doing well, I used to tell the person directly to his face in a general meeting. The employees said that was insulting and they should be pulled aside individually to be told of the inefficiency. But in today's world, you cannot afford to do that every time. Besides, I figured that criticizing someone in a meeting was for the benefit of all present, and everyone could learn from that individual's mistakes. It was then that I learned how Indians do not differentiate between criticizing an idea and criticizing an individual. So, in a group, if you tell someone that his idea is no good, he automatically takes it personally and assumes that you are criticizing him. No one can have a good idea every day or on every issue. If you disagree with my idea, that does not mean that you have found fault with me as a person. Thus, it is perfectly acceptable for anyone to criticize the boss, but this concept is not a part of the Indian system. So from time to time, it is important for an organization's chief executive to get a report on the psychological health of the firm. How do people in the team feel? Are they stable, confident, secure, comfortable? These are the key elements of a team's success. For a boss to be comfortable accepting criticism from subordinates, he must feel good about himself. Self-esteem is a key prerequisite to such a system being successful. Another serious problem facing India is the dichotomy and difference in respectability between physical and mental workers, which seriously affects team performance. I had a driver named Ram, who I thought was one of the best drivers in the world. He used to open the door for me whenever he entered or exited the car. Right in the first few days, I told him, Ram bhai, you are not going to open the door for me. You can do that if I lose my hands. Ram almost started crying. He said, Sir, what are you saying? This is my job. I told him that I didn't want to treat him like a mere driver. He had to become a team player. I told him that whenever he was not driving, he should come into office and help out with office work, make copies, file papers, send faxes, answer phone calls, or simply read rather than sit in the car and wait for me to show up. Glossary. C. The Telecom Technology Development Center of THE. Government of India. Figure, V. To think that something is true. Differentiate, V. To recognize that two things are not the same. To tell apart. Subordinate, a person with less authority than somebody else in a group. Prerequisite, precondition, something that must exist before something else. Can happen. Dichotomy, the separation that exists between two groups. Think it out. 1. How did the author handle inefficient employees in C. 2. How did the errant employees react to his open criticism? 3. What was the author's intention behind open criticism? 4. What did he learn about Indian attitude to criticism? 5. Does criticizing an idea mean criticizing an individual? 6. Can an employee afford to criticize the boss in India? 7. What are the key elements of a team's success? 8. What affects team performance in India? 9. What was the job of the author's driver? 10. How did he react when the author asked him not to open the door of the seer for him? 11. How did the author like to use the driver? 12. How did the author motivate the driver to be a team player? Unit IV. Warm up. You might have marked that each player in a football, hockey, or cricket team is assigned a position. They hardly change positions. For example, a goalkeeper in a football or hockey team, or a wicketkeeper in a cricket team has a particular role to play. Observe what will happen if players change their positions. Read the following unit of the text and note the importance of diversifying tasks. The text. Diversifying tasks increases workers' self-esteem and motivation and makes them team players. Now, even if I call him for work in the middle of the night, he is ready because I respect him for what he does. Team interactions, unfortunately, when good teams do get created, almost invariably fall apart. In our system today, it is very difficult to build teams because nobody wants to be seen playing second fiddle. It is very hard in India to find good losers. Well, you win some and you lose some. If you lose some, you should move on. You don't need to spend all your time and energy of different cultural backgrounds, religions, ethnicities, and caste groups, a fertile ground of diversity in the workplace. We should actually be experts in working with diversity. But it can only happen when we get rid of personal, caste, and community interests. There could be a 40-year-old CEO with a 55-year-old VP. It has nothing to do with age, capability, and expertise are what counts. But you don't yet see these attitudes taking hold in India. Managers in the US corporate environment who work with Indians, and in fact, with Asians in general, need to recognize that these individuals have a tendency to feel that they are not getting recognition or are not being respected. It must be realized that these individuals have lower self-esteem to begin with and therefore have to be pampered and encouraged a little more because they need it. This makes them feel better and work better. There is no substitute for teamwork. Teamwork is key to corporate and national governance, and to get anything done. The fundamental issues are trust, CT for others, openness, honesty, communication, willingness to disagree, resolution of conflict, and recognition that the larger goal of the team as a whole is above individual or personal agendas. Don't be afraid of pressure. Remember that pressure is what turns a lump of coal into diamond. Glossary. Invariably always fall apart, crumble. Playing second fiddle, to be in a subordinate position to someone, ethnicity belonging to a particular race. CEO, Chief Executive Officer, American English, Managing Director, MD, in British English. Think it out. 1. How do diversifying tasks help workers? 2. Why is it difficult to build teams in India? 3. How can working with diversity happen? 4. Does age matter for holding positions? 5. What matters much for a senior position: age or capability? 6. How should the seniors treat employees with lower self-esteem? 7. What are the fundamental ideals in corporate environment? Post-reading activities. Doing with words. A. Mark the following two words, cooperation and implementation. Cooperation is the noun form of cooperate. Implementation is the noun form of implement. Write the noun forms of the following words: I compete dot 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 dot. E. Dedicate dot 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 dot. E. Define dot 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 dot. IV. Migrate dot 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 dot. V. Narrate dot 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 dot. Y. Negotiate dot 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 dot. V. Repeat dot 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 dot. B. Study the following sentences in 1. Write in the first few days, I told him, Ram bhai, you are not going to open the door for me. You can do that if I lose my hands. 2. He said, Sir, what are you saying? This is my job. 3. I told him that I didn't want to treat him like a mere driver. 4. I told him that whenever he was not driving, he should come into office and help out with office work, make copies, file papers, send faxes, answer phone calls, or simply read rather than sit in the car and wait for me to show up. Sentence 1 and 2 are in direct speech. What a person says appears within quotation marks. Sentence 3 and 4 are in indirect speech, reporting what a person says without quoting his exact words. It is also called reported speech. Sentence 1 is indirect speech. Here the exact words of the speaker have been put within quotation marks. There is a comma after told. The first word inside the quotation mark starts with a capital letter. Sentence 2 is also indirect speech. Sentence 3 is in indirect speech. Here, the quotation marks as well as the comma after said are removed. The conjunction that introduces to us the words, not exact, as spoken by the speaker. However, the latest trend is to drop that. Sentence 4 is also in indirect speech. Read the passage below and fill in the blanks with DS for sentences in direct speech and RS for indirect speech. The manager of the bank said, Mr. Foreman, how much money have you deposited with us? Albert Foreman said that he had only a pretty idea about it. The manager said, apart from what you have deposited this morning, it's a little over 30,000 pounds. Albert said, is it so? The manager said that it was a very large sum to have on deposit and Foreman should have thought of a better investment plan for his money. Albert said, I don't want to take any risk, sir, I know it's safe in the bank. The manager said that the bank would invest the money in stocks and shares. A troubled look settled on Mr. Foreman's distinguished face as he said, well, I'll have to leave it all in your hands then. The manager smiled and said, we'll do everything for you and all you'll have to do next time you come in is just to sign the transfers. Albert said uncertainly. But how should I know what I was signing? I suppose you can read, said the manager. Mr. Foreman gave him a disarming smile and said that he did not know how to read or write, he could only sign his name and he had learned to do that when he went into business. The manager was so surprised that he jumped up from his chair and said, "That's the most extraordinary thing I ever heard." Albert said that he had never had the opportunity to read and write until it was too late. The manager stared at him as though he were a prehistoric monster and said, "Good God, man, what would you be now if you had been able to read and write?" "I'd be verger of St. Peter's," said Albert Foreman, with a little smile on his aristocratic features. Development of polio vaccines. Bonnie A. Maybury O'Conk and Linda Morgenstern, editor. Introducing the author. Bonnie A. Maybury O'Conk is an American microbiologist and fiction writer. Unit I. Warm-up. Poliomyelitis or polio is an acute, viral, infectious disease that spreads from person to person, primarily via the fecal-oral route. Polio is a very serious disease, which can lead to paralysis or even death. At one time, polio was one of the most dreaded childhood illnesses of the 20th century. The disease caused severe illness in thousands of children each year before the vaccine was introduced in 1955. Thanks to the introduction and widespread use of the vaccine, the number of cases has decreased significantly. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd President of the United States, was a victim of polio. Read the following unit of the text and note how FDR contacted polio. The text. In 1921, outbreaks of poliomyelitis plagued America. That summer, a young politician named Franklin Delano Roosevelt was vacationing with his family at their Campobello estate. After an exhausting day fighting a local forest fire, taking a cold swim for relief, and then lounging in his wet swimsuit at home, he went to bed feeling as though he had contracted a cold. In a few days, Roosevelt found out he had polio. As it did with Roosevelt, polio can strike quickly. The virus enters the body by nose or mouth and travels to the intestines, where it incubates. A few days later, most patients are either asymptomatic or they experience flu-like symptoms, such as headache, nausea, vomiting, and fever. Whether they are symptomatic or not, people at this stage can pass the disease on to others. Polio can be spread through contact with infected feces or through infected droplets traveling through the air, in food, or in water. The virus next enters the bloodstream, and the patient makes antibodies against it. In most cases, this stops the progression of the virus. Lifelong immunity against the disease is acquired. 10% of infected people develop symptoms and 1% develop the paralytic form of polio. Roosevelt was one of the unlucky ones. His legs were left permanently paralyzed. In cases such as his, the virus reaches the brain and spinal cord where it multiplies and destroys the nerve tissue. At this point, the disease becomes spinal or bulbar, involving the last 4 or 5 cranial nerves, depending on which nerves are affected. Both forms are characterized by muscle pain, stiff neck and back, and possible paralysis. The spinal form affects the limbs. The bulbar form affects the lungs so that patients cannot breathe. After a severe attack of polio in its paralytic form, there is no treatment for the disease itself, although symptoms such as muscular paralysis can be helped with physical therapy. How much a person will recover varies from individual to individual. Glossary. Poliomyelitis, poliovirus. Plague caused trouble for a period of time, incubate, hatch. Asymptomatic in medicine, a disease is considered asymptomatic if a patient is a carrier for a disease or infection but experiences no symptoms. Antibodies Ig, are found in blood or other bodily fluids of vertebrates, and are used by the immune system to identify and neutralize foreign objects, such as bacteria and viruses. Think it out. 1. What is poliomyelitis? 2. When did Roosevelt find out that he had polio? 3. What are the early symptoms of polio attack? 4. Which things are the carriers of poliovirus? 5. What percentage of people attacked by poliovirus does actually suffer from severe polio? 6. What are the two forms of polio? 7. Are the symptoms of both the forms of polio similar or different? Which form of the disease is more dangerous? Unit 2. Warm up. Do you know that children are the most vulnerable to polio? Read the following unit of the text below and note what steps FDR took to eradicate polio. The text. Roosevelt was determined not to let this major illness get the best of him. He not only continued his illustrious political career, resulting in his well-documented and long-term presidency of the United States, but he went on to spearhead the fight against polio, increasing public awareness of the deadly disease and promoting research. Although polio never devastated large numbers of the population like the plague or influenza, it was a frightening, highly contagious disease that attacked both the poor and rich and arose in terrifying outbreaks which seemed impossible to stop in spite of advances in medicine. Through the first half of this century, basic hygiene methods and knowledge had advanced tremendously. For the first time in civilization, people aim to expect good health instead of merely hoping for it. But polio still attacked, and children were the most vulnerable. Many can remember seeing, in the early 1950s, heartbreaking posters of children on crutches or in iron lungs, the cumbersome mechanical aids which helped those whose lungs were paralyzed to breathe. Lacking a vaccine, parents throughout the country panicked, keeping their children from schools and other public facilities. Why couldn't a vaccine be found? Glossary. Illustrious, famous and much admired spearhead, to lead an attack against something devastated, destroyed completely. Contagious disease that spreads by people touching each other, vulnerable, easily hurt physically, not protected against attack, cumbersome, large and heavy. Think it out. 1. Did polio affect Roosevelt's political career? 2. What was the highest position did Roosevelt achieve in his political career? 3. How did he spearhead the fight against polio? 4. Who are the most vulnerable to polio? 5. Why were parents in the early 1950s afraid of sending their children to schools? Unit 3. Warm up. Some baffling observations were made by the researchers in the early 1900s in their attempt to find out a vaccine for polio. Read the following unit of the text and note what sanitation has to do with the attack of polio. The text. Vaccine developments for our polio had begun in the early 1900s. However, early attempts failed, partly because researchers did not know there was more than one virus. We now know that polio is caused by 3 strains of quite stable viruses that are a part of the enterovirus family, which have RNA as their genetic material. These viruses can remain infectious for long periods of time in water and foods. To be effective, a vaccine has to confer immunity against all 3 strains. Ironically, before the 1900s, immunity was acquired primarily during infancy because sanitation conditions were poor and efforts at sewage and water treatments were primitive. Babies were frequently exposed to polioviruses. These infants did not contract the disease because their mother's antibodies were passed on to them through breastfeeding. The babies then developed their own antibodies to the virus. Paradoxically, when sanitation improved, infants were no longer exposed at an age when they were protected, so they did not develop antibodies to the viruses. Consequently, when they were exposed to the virus in later childhood and adulthood, they were at risk to contract polio. This understanding about the nature of polio grew through painstaking research over the first half of the 20th century, much of it funded by the March of Dimes, a grassroots organization founded with the help of President Roosevelt. The organization decided to enlist the services of a respected researcher who was certain he could find a safe vaccination. Glossary. Enterovirus, virus that causes gastrointestinal illness. RNA ribonucleic acid (RNA) is one of the 3 major macromolecules, along with DNA and proteins, essential for all known forms of life. Infectious that can be passed easily from one person to another. Tahir March of Dimes, a foundation in the United States that works to improve the health of mothers and babies. It was originally founded Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1938 to combat polio. Think it out. 1. Why did early attempts at the development of polio vaccine fail? 2. Why were some children immune to polio before the 1900s? 3. Did improved sanitation help to avoid polio attack before the 1900s? 4. How did the March of Dimes work for the elimination of polio? Unit IV. Warm up. Dr. Jonas Salk was the pioneer in developing a vaccine for polio. Read the following unit of the text and note the contributions of scientists for the development of vaccine polio. The text. Dr. Jonas Salk had begun his medical research career studying immunology. In 1947, while at the University of Pittsburgh, he began his research on poliovirus. His research was greatly helped in 1949, when a method of growing poliovirus in cell culture, instead of having to use primarily monkeys for research, was discovered. Salk needed to find a way to process the viruses so that they were less infectious before using them in a vaccine. In 1952, Salk was the first to develop a successful vaccine using a mixture of the three types of virus grown in monkey kidney cultures. He developed a process using formalin, a chemical that inactivated the whole virus. What followed was massive testing of the vaccine in clinical trials in the United States and parts of Canada, begun in 1954. The scope of the trials was unprecedented in medical history. The results were dramatic. Cases of polio fell spectacularly in the vaccinated test groups. In 1955, the government quickly granted permission for the vaccine to be distributed to the children of our country. But there was a problem with the original Salk vaccine. The vaccine actually induced 260 cases of poliomyelitis, including 10 deaths. The problem was traced to incomplete inactivation of some virus particles, which was soon corrected. Since then, the vaccine has been highly effective, with a 70-90% protection rate. In 1957, in an effort to improve upon the killed Salk vaccine, Albert Bruce Sabin began testing a live, oral form of vaccine in which the infectious part of the virus was inactivated, attenuated. This vaccine became available for use in 1963. The Salk vaccine is given in 2 intramuscular injections spaced 1 month apart and requires boosters every 5 years. Because of the way it is inactivated, the vaccine is safe for those with compromised, weakened immune systems. The Sabin oral vaccine is given in 3 doses in the first 2 years of life, and a booster is given when the child starts school. Further boosters are not given unless the patient is exposed to polio or will be traveling to an endemic region. The advantages of a live, oral vaccine are its long-lasting immunity, the prevention of reinfection of the digestive tract, and the lower cost of administering the vaccine orally because sterile syringes and needles are not necessary. However, a major disadvantage is that it cannot be used for patients with compromised immune systems because it is a live virus and can cause disease in these patients. It also cannot be used by those in close contact with immunocompromised patients because the live virus in the vaccine can be shed in the case of those who ingest it, and can possibly be transmitted to the immunocompromised patient. Another disadvantage of the Sabin oral vaccine is that those who have an enterovirus infection of the gastrointestinal tract when taking the oral vaccine may not develop the immune response. Clearly, both vaccines have their advantages and disadvantages with regard to relative safety and cost. Glossary. Immunology: the scientific study of protection against disease. Drive. Jonas Salk. Jonas Edward Salk (1914–1995) was an American medical researcher and virologist, best known for his discovery and development of the first safe and effective polio vaccine. Albert Bruce Sabin 1906-1993, was an American medical researcher best known for having developed an oral polio vaccine. Cell culture is the complex process by which cells are grown under controlled conditions, generally outside of their natural environment. Intramuscular injections, medicinal doses injected into the muscle booster, a second dose of medicine given to strengthen the earlier dose, endemic region, infected area, sterile syringes, disinfected injection syringes. Immunocompromised, a body that does not have good immunity, the ability to defend against illness. Think it out. 1. What method did Jonas Salk use to develop polio vaccine? 2. How did Salk develop a successful vaccine? 3. How was the first polio vaccine accepted? 4. What was the problem with the original Salk vaccine? 5. How was Salk vaccine given? 6. How is Sabin vaccine given? 7. What are the advantages of an oral vaccine? 8. What is its major disadvantage? Unit V. Warm up. Do you know the WHO? The World Health Organization, WHO, is a specialized agency of the United Nations, UN, that is concerned with international public health. Read the following unit of the text and note the contributions of the WHO for the eradication of poliomyelitis from the entire world. The text. The debate between safety and cost will continue, but we are fortunate to have two good alternatives to choose from. Both vaccines are currently in use throughout the world. In the United States, the Sabin vaccine is used almost exclusively. In other countries, the Salk vaccine is preferred. Research continues to improve these vaccines. More effective culturing and purification techniques have been developed, allowing the vaccines to induce higher levels of antibody formation. In the exciting research field of recombinant biotechnology, scientists are also attempting genetic alteration of the poliovirus. Researchers are using Escherichia coli, a common bacterium that inhabits the gastrointestinal tract of humans, as a host for bacterial gene cloning. Work is being done to take the genes of poliovirus which code for the synthesis of the viral capsid, the protein coat of a virus particle, and to combine it with E. coli's genes. The E. coli can then synthesize viral capsid proteins to be used in making a vaccine. This latter approach eliminates any possibility of the virus infecting the vaccinated patient because the vaccine contains only a part of the virus, excluding potentially dangerous content. The discovery and use of polio vaccines has all but eliminated polio in the Americas. In 1960, there were 2,525 cases of paralytic polio in the United States. By 1965, there were 61. Between 1980 and 1990, cases averaged 8 per year, and most of those were induced by vaccination. There has not been a single case of polio caused by the wild virus since 1979, with a rare case reported each year from persons coming into the country carrying the virus. In 1994, polio was declared eradicated in all of the Americas. In 1988, the World Health Organization set a goal of eradication of poliomyelitis from the entire world by the year 2000. This is theoretically possible since the poliovirus is found only in humans, and humans can be immunized. Smallpox was the first disease in history to be eradicated. It seems likely that polio could follow in its footsteps. Glossary. Recombinant biotechnology, an advanced process of vaccine production. Genetic cloning, the process of producing similar populations of genetically identical individuals that occur in nature when organisms such as bacteria, insects or plants reproduce asexually. Think it out. 1. What induces higher levels of antibody formation? 2. What is the latest research in development of polio vaccine? 3. Is complete eradication of poliomyelitis possible? Post-reading activities. Doing with words. 8. Study the following sentence and note the verbs in it. Paradoxically, when sanitation improved, infants were no longer exposed at an age when they were protected, so they did not develop antibodies to the viruses. There are four finite verbs: improved, were exposed, were protected, did develop. Note: improved and did develop are in active voice, were exposed, and were protected are in passive voice. In passive voice, the form of the verb is be plus pp verb, any form of the auxiliary verb be plus past participle form of the main verb were plus exposed d, were plus protect ed. Identify the finite verbs in the following sentences and write which verbs are in active voice, and which are in passive voice. I. The virus enters the body by nose or mouth and travels to the intestines, where it incubates. E. In most cases, this stops the progression of the virus. Lifelong immunity against the disease is acquired. E. Babies were frequently exposed to poliovirus S. IV. These infants did not contract the disease because their mothers' antibodies were passed on to them through breastfeeding. V. He developed a process using formalin, a chemical that inactivated the whole virus. Y. The Salk vaccine is given in 2 intramuscular injections spaced 1 month apart and requires boosters every 5 years. V. The Sabin oral vaccine is given in 3 doses in the first 2 years of life, and a booster is given when the child starts school. B. Fill in the blanks with the verbs given in brackets in active voice. Use simple past tense. I. Ramakrishna fascinate him. E. Wanderlust seize him. E. He feel the presence of an inward power. IV. He decide to take part in Tihi Parliament of Religions. V. A friendly Maharaja give him his passage. Y. He addressed the audience as sisters and brothers of America. V. Hundreds rise and applaud. V. He use no written text, not even notes. X. America's outward glitter not deceive him. X. He preach Hindu philosophy. C. Fill in the blanks with the verbs given in brackets in passive voice. Use simple present tense. I. Civilization not inherit. E. It learn and earn by each generation anew. E. If the transmission of civilization interrupt for 1 century, civilization will die and we will be savage again. IV. Therefore, importance give to higher education in our country. V. Colleges designed to meet the needs of higher education. Behold the STRs Franklin Delano Roosevelt, January 30, 1882 to April 12, 1945, also known by his initials, FDR, was the 32nd President of the United States, 1933-1945, and a central figure in world events during the mid-20th century, leading the United States during a time of worldwide economic crisis and World War II. He is the only American president elected to the presidency for more than 2 terms. Jonas Edward Salk, October 28, 1914 to June 23, 1995, is an American medical researcher and virologist, best known for his discovery and development of the first safe and effective polio vaccine. Albert Bruce Sabin, August 26, 1906 to March 3, 1993, is an American medical researcher best known for having developed an oral polio vaccine. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Robert Frost. Introducing the author. Robert Lee Frost, 1874-1963, is one of the most popular and critically acclaimed American poets. He is highly regarded for his realistic depictions of rural life and his command of American colloquial speech. His poetry reveals a keen interest in the varying beauties of nature and the apparently small but deeply meaningful joys and sorrows of ordinary men and women. Warm up. Do you know this poem was a great favorite of Jawaharlal Nehru? Perhaps this poem reminded him of his responsibilities. On the surface, this is a simple poem. The speaker stops his horse by some woods on a snowy evening. He takes in the lovely scene in near silence, is tempted to stay longer, but acknowledges the pull of obligations and the considerable distance yet to be traveled before he can rest for the night. But at the deeper level, the journey through the woods is suggestive of journey through life itself. The speaker stops for a brief time to meditate, and realizes that he needs to continue his journey. The famous phrase "and miles to go before I sleep" not only refers to the physical distance of the trip but also the long life ahead of him. Read the poem and feel how inspiring it is. The text. Whose woods these are I think I know. His house is in the village though he will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. For my little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near between the woods and frozen lake. The darkest evening of the year. 8. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. 12. The woods are lovely, dark and deep. But I have promises to keep. And miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. 16. Glossary. Woods, an area of trees, smaller than a forest. Little, humble, ordinary. Queer, strange. Harness bells, small bells attached to a strap band around the neck of horse which tinkles as the horse moves. Flake pieces of snow which are soft, light and white as feathers. Easy wind and downy flake, easily flowing wind, and down, falling snow. Mile, a distance of 1.6 kilometers. Miles implies a long distance, lovely, dark and deep. Only the poet is fascinated by the woods, the owner, who is practical, and the horse, which is subhuman, are not. Think it out. 1. How is woods different from forest? 2. Where does the rider stop? 3. Why does he stop? 4. He will not see me stopping here. What does this expression mean? 5. Why does the horse give his harness bells a shake? 6. What is the only other sound, besides that of harness bells? 7. Why does the poet use the expressions, dark, deep, darkest? 8. How do the speaker, the owner of the woods and the horse react to the beauties of nature? 9. What picture of natural beauty do you get from the poem? 10. In the final stanza, the speaker sighs that he is not yet ready to sleep. What has he to do before he can take rest? 10. What does the expression, the darkest evening of the year, suggest? Does it mean, the longest night of the year, or the most depressing state of his mind? Give a reasoned answer. 11. A 4-line stanza is called a quatrain. How many quatrains are there in the poem? Post-reading activities. 1. Arrange the following sentences in their logical order to narrate the theme of the poem. A. He passes by the woods which are lovely, dark and deep. B. The poet is riding his horse to a destination. C. But he remembers that he has promises to keep before he can rest. D. It is snowing and the wind blows gently. A. The beauty of the woods tempts him to stop and enjoy the sight. F. It is an evening in winter. 2. Note the rhyme scheme in the first quatrain. It is AABA, no, though, here, snow. What is the rhyme scheme in other quatrains? Oft, in the STILLY night. Thomas Moore. Introducing the poet. Thomas Moore, 1779-1852, is an Irish poet, satirist, composer, and political propagandist. Warm up. Memories, sweet or sad, always live with us. We cherish fond memories. Elderly people who have very little to look forward to often recall friendships and past incidents. Nostalgia haunts them. Thomas Moore canvasses the memories of past and present in this poem. It is one of the finest songs of Moore, with complete adaptation of words to music and music to words, along with a high quality of poetical merit in the verse. Read this poem and note how the poet longs for the days gone by, and the dear ones who have passed away. The text. Oft, in the stilly night. Ere slumber's chain has bound me, fond memory brings the light of other days around me, for the smiles, the tears of boyhood's years. The words of love then spoken. The eyes that shone, 8 now dimmed and gone. The cheerful hearts now broken. Thus, in the stilly night, ere slumber's chain hath bound me, 12 sad memory brings the light of other days around me. When I remember all the friends, so linked together, 16 I've seen around me fall. Like leaves in wintry weather, I feel like one who treads alone 20 some banquet hall deserted, whose lights are fled, whose garlands dead, and all but he departed. 24 Thus, in the stilly night, ere slumber's chain has bound me, sad memory brings the light of other days around me. 28 Glossary. Oft often stilly quiet, calm slumber deep sleep tread to walk. Banquet a formal meal for a large number of people usually on a special occasion, banquet hall deserted, expresses the loneliness of the last survivor. Departed dead. Think it out. 1. When do the past memories occur to the poet? 2. What does other days mean? 3. Are the memories of boyhood sweet or sad? Quote the line in support of your answer. How does the poet grieve for his dear ones who have passed away? 4. How does he recall his friends? 5. Does the poet feel lonely in the absence of his near and dear ones? Quote the line in support of your answer. 6. Simile is a figure of speech used to make comparison between two unlike things using as like. Figure of speech does the poet use to express his loneliness. 7. The figure of speech used to express inanimate beings as animate is called personification. Give the example of personification used in the poem. The Inchcape Rock. Robert Southey. Introducing the author. Robert Southey, the 12th of August 1774, the 21st of March 1843, was an English romantic poet and poet laureate from 1813 to his death in 1843. He is a prolific letter writer, literary scholar, essay writer, historian and biographer. Warm-up. The Inchcape Rock is a perilous reef off the east coast of Scotland near the mouth of the River Tay. The rock was a few inches above the surface of the sea in low tide and was completely covered by the sea in high tide or when the sea was rough. Many ships had been wrecked by this Inchcape Rock when it was covered by the sea. This poem is based on this notorious Inchcape Rock. In this poem, Southey decries the evildoing of Sir Ralph the Rover, who pays with his life for the crime of removing the Inchcape Bell and his sins against humanity. Read the following unit of the text and note how dangerous the Inchcape Rock was. Unit I. The text. No stir in the air, no stir in the sea, the ship was still as she could be, her sails from heaven received no motion, her keel was steady in the ocean. Without either sign or sound of their shock, 5 the waves flowed over the Inchcape Rock. So little they rose, so little they fell, they did not move the Inchcape Bell. The abbot of Aberbrothok had placed that bell on the Inchcape Rock. 10 On a buoy in the storm it floated and swung, and over the waves its warning rung. When the rock was hit by the surge's swell, the mariners heard the warning bell. And then they knew the perilous rock. 15 And blessed the abbot of Aberbrothok. Glossary. Keel, bottom part of the ship. Buoy, a floating object on the sea to mark a dangerous place. Surges, swell, rise of the tidal waves. Mariner, sailor. Think it out. 1. How does the poet describe the Inchcape Rock? 2. Was the Inchcape Rock dangerous? Give your reasons. 3. Why did the abbot place a bell on the Inchcape Rock? 4. When did the Inchcape bell ring? 5. Why did mariners bless the abbot? Unit 2. Warm up. Wicked people get pleasure by causing pain to others, don't they? Read the following unit of the text and note how a wicked person like Sir Ralph the Rover does mischief out of malice towards the abbot. The text. The sun in heaven was shining gay, all things were joyful on that day. The sea birds screamed as they wheeled round and there was joyance in their sound. 20. The buoy of the Inchcape Bell was seen a darker speck on the ocean green. Sir Ralph the rover walked his deck, and he fixed his eye on the darker speck. He felt the cheering power of spring. 25 It made him whistle, it made him sing. His heart was mirthful to excess. But the rover's mirth was wickedness. His eye was on the Inchcape float. Quoth he, My men, put out the boat 30 and row me to the Inchcape rock. And I'll plague the abbot of Aberbrothock. The boat is lowered, the boatmen row, and to the Inchcape rock they go. Sir Ralph bent over from the boat 35 and he cut the bell from the Inchcape float. Down sunk the bell with a gurgling sound, the bubbles rose and burst around. Quoth Sir Ralph, the next who comes to the rock won't bless the abbot of Aberbrothock. 40 Glossary. Buoy a floating object, a float speck a very small spot mirth delight quoth said plague we cause pain think it out. 1. How does the poet express the cheering power of spring? 2. How did Ralph come across the Inchcape Bell? 3. What was effect of the cheering power of spring on Ralph? 4. What kind of a person was Ralph? Which line tells you so? 5. What act of wickedness did he do? 6. Why did he do the wicked act? Unit 3. Warm up. Do you know sin always recoils on the sinner? Read the following unit of the text and note how Sir Ralph the rover pays for the sins he has committed. The text. Sir Ralph the rover sailed away, he scoured the seas for many a day, and now grown rich with plundered store he steers his course for Scotland's shore. So thick a haze o'erspreads the sky 45 they cannot see the sun on high. The wind hath blown gale all day, at evening it hath died away. On the deck the rover takes his stand. So dark it is they see no land. 50 Quoth Sir Ralph, it will be lighter soon. For there is the dawn of the rising moon. Canst hear, said one, the breakers roar? For methinks we should be near the shore. Now where we are I cannot tell. 55 But I wish I could hear the Inchcape Bell. They hear no sound, the swell is strong, though the wind hath fallen they drift along, till the vessel strikes with a shivering shock. O Christ! It is the Inchcape rock. 60 Sir Ralph the rover tore his hair, he cursed himself in his despair, the waves rush in on every side, the ship is sinking beneath the tide. But even in his dying fear 65 One dreadful sound could the rover hear. A sound as if with the Inchcape Bell the devil below was ringing his knell. Glossary. Plunder loot haze fog gale storm canst can think it out. 1. How did Ralph become rich? 2. Why did the ship lose its way in the sea while it was heading towards Scotland? 3. Why did a mariner think that they were near the shore? 4. O Christ! It is the Inchcape rock, why did the mariners exclaim so? 5. Why did Sir Ralph curse himself? 6. The devil below was ringing his knell, what does this expression mean? 7. Do you find this poem musical? The rhyme scheme of the first stanza is AABB, CA, BA, motion B, ocean B. Is the rhyme scheme same for all the stanzas? To my true friend Elizabeth Pinard. Warm up. We meet our true friend only once in a lifetime. The greatest gift is not found in a mall but in the hearts of a true friend. Friendship is a relationship between two persons who hold mutual affection for each other. The value of friendship is often the result of friends consistently demonstrating the desire to do what is best for the other, showing mutual understanding, emotional support, and compassion. Friendship is also marked by enjoyment of each other's company, trust in each other, and positive reciprocity. Read the poem and note how the poet cherishes the memories of her friend. The text. The day I met you, I found a friend, and a friendship that I pray will never end. 4. Your smile so sweet and so bright kept me going when day was as dark as night. 8. You never ever judged me, you understood my sorrow. Then you told me it needn't be that way, and gave me the hope of a better tomorrow. 12. You were always there for me, I knew I could count on you. You gave me advice and encouragement. whenever I didn't know what to do. 16. You helped me learn to love myself. You made life seem so good. You said I can do anything I put my mind to. And suddenly I knew I could. 20. There were times when we didn't see eye to eye, and there were days when both of us cried. But even so, we made it through. Our friendship hasn't yet died. 24. Circumstances have pulled us apart, we are separated by many miles. Truly, the only thing that keeps me going is my treasured memory of your smile. 28. This friendship we share is so precious to me. I hope it grows and flourishes and lasts unto infinity. 32. You are so extra special to me, and so this to you I really must tell, you are my one true friend. My guardian angel. 36. Our friendship is one in a million, so let's hold on to it and each other. We cannot let this chance of pure bliss fly away, for there will never be another. 40. I love you. I will always love you. Glossary. When day was as dark as night, when the poet was passing through a difficult time, never judged, never formed opinion on, taken for granted, guardian angel, one who protects and guides, think it out. 1. What does the poet pray for? 2. How did the friend encourage the poet? 3. How did the friend reassure her? 4. Why did the poet trust her friend? 5. How did the friend inspire self-confidence in the poet? 6. How does the poet cherish the memory of her friend? 7. Are the friends staying close to each other? Quote the line in support of your answer. 8. How does the poet value her friendship? 9. Why does she call her friend extra special? 10. What is the poet's final wish? Fishing. Gopa Ranjan Mishra. Introducing the poet. Gopa Ranjan Mishra, 1954, a well-known teacher of English in Odisha, has a fascination for writing poems in English. He has recited most of his poems to learned audience in different parts of the country and has been widely acclaimed. At present, he is working as the principal of JKBK College, Cuttack. Warm-up. Poetry is, first of all, for enjoyment. The musical qualities as well as the rhythm of a poem are its foremost attractions. Many poems also tell us a fascinating story. Fishing is such a poem with both the qualities music and charm. In this poem, the poet seems to convey the idea that an act of kindness is a rich source of joy. Read the poem and note what the speaker plans to do and what he ends up with. The text. Like a seasoned angler show off his feet with fishing rod and line and bait, I said, you all, wait for me. Fish fry tonight our dinner will be. 4. Though none of them did say a word on my face, yet I heard some chuckles show at my back. I told myself, let me come back. 8. To the nearby pond I straightaway ran with fishing tackle, and of course, a can. The minutes passed and the hours dragged, it seemed no luck that day I had. 12. I thought fishless I'd return home and would face the jeers of some. I threw my line with a fervent wish. Oh God, today please give me a fish. 16. And lo, the float sank, rose again and popped its head to tell me then, this is just the time, you man, to catch a fish if you can. 20. Without delay I pulled the string, and what a catch did it bring. A 1-foot fish, bright and fair, that wriggled and wriggled in the air. 24. At this my joy knew no bound, I ran excited round and round, but with a gasping mouth and wistful look. It seemed to say, please unhook 28 me and let me go again to my home, my watery den. I did think of my 3 hours labour and the spicy fish fry flavor. 32. Back home some mocking face would stare for nothing, however, I did care. As the sun was sinking behind the hill, a strange feeling my heart did fill. 36. In the evening's crimson glow, with greater joy, I let it go. Glossary. Seasoned, of a person with a lot of experience in a particular kind of work. Angler, one who fishes with an angler hook attached to A fishing line bait food put on a hook to catch fish chuckles silent laughter, here, meant to taunt, fishing tackle all the equipment, such as rods, lines, bait, etc., used. In angling jeers taunts, rude remarks think it out. 1. What idea of the speaker's age do you guess from the opening lines? 2. How did the speaker prepare himself for fishing? See Lu, gear and attitude. 3. What did he declare to his family? What silent response did he sense from the members of the family? 4. Describe his initial experience while fishing. LNS. 9 to 12. 5. What did he dread to face when he would be back at home? LNS. 13-15. 6. How was his prayer answered? 7. Discuss the contrasting moods presented in stanzas 3 and 4, and 5. 8. Describe take catch. 9. How has the speaker described his joy and the despair of the fish? 10. What did he think the fish was pleading for? 11. What was the debate in the speaker's mind? 12. Discuss the significance of for nothing, however, I did care, ln. 34. 13. What was the strange feeling that the speaker felt? Can you relate the feeling to the crimson glow and greater joy? LNS. 36 to 38. 14. Which action brought about a greater joy in the heart of the speaker? In comparison to the ultimate greater joy, what do you think would have been a lesser one? 15. Why does he find this feeling strange? 16. Do you think the speaker was sensitive? Why do you think so? Clue, at least 2 reasons. 17. Notice that all the stanzas excluding stanza 7 have 4 lines each. How is stanza 7 different from other stanzas? 18. Describe the change of mind that the speaker had between the afternoon and the evening of the same day. Tailpiece. Life is mostly froth and bubble, 2 things stand like stone, kindness in another's trouble, courage in your own. Adam Lindsay Gordon, 1833-1870. Daffodils William Wordsworth. Introducing the poet. William Wordsworth, 1770-1850, is one of the major poets of his time. He was honored as England's Poet Laureate. He defined poetry as spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings arising from emotions recollected in tranquility. He is a poet of nature, and used common words to express his feelings. Warm up. This poem incorporates the ideas and aspects essential to romantic poetry. The field of daffodils is evidently the subject of this poem, making nature the most apparent feature throughout. Wordsworth adds a range of natural images such as lakes, trees, stars, and even clouds in this poem. Through nature, a tranquil mood is instantly created from the very first line, I wandered lonely as a cloud. The atmosphere of the poem is very peaceful, and the use of nature creates a joyful setting. Not until the poet later muses about what he saw does he fully appreciate the cheerful sight of the dancing daffodils. Study the poem and note how Wordsworth glorifies the beauty of nature and the bliss of solitude. The text. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, 5 fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line. Along the margin of a bay, 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay, 15 in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, 20 they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude, and then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils. Glossary. Daffodils, bell-shaped flowers of golden yellow color and beautiful fragrance, that bloom in early spring, usually by the side of lakes. Lonely as a cloud is a single patch of cloud floats freely in the sky. A host of a large number of fluttering moving to and fro in the wind. Milky Way, the broad, luminous band of stars encircling the sky, the galaxy margin border. Sprightly, lively. Outdid, in glee, the daffodils in cheerfulness and brightness surpass the waves. Glee, joy, jocund, merry, little thought, no thought, oft, often, many times, vacant, free from thought, pensive, thoughtful, flash, appear suddenly. Inward eye, mind's eye. The reference is to the picture formed in the mind rather than what the eyes see. Bliss, perfect happiness, great joy, solitude, the state of loneliness. Think it out. 1. When did the poet see the daffodils? 2. Where did the poet see the daffodils? 3. Fill in the blanks to describe the idea of stanza 1. The poet was in the English countryside. He saw thousands of fluttering and dancing beneath and beside. The daffodils appeared to be in the strong breeze. 4. What does the poet compare the daffodils with? 5. What resemblance does he find between the stars and the daffodils? 6. What does the poet say about the number of flowers? 7. Where were the flowers? 8. Which of the two danced more sprightly, the waves or the daffodils? 9. How does the poet feel while looking at the daffodils? 10. What happens to the poet when he lies on his couch? 11. Mention the two moods of the poet. 12. What does the poet feel when he remembers the sight of the daffodils? 13. When does the poet write the poem beside or of the lake? 14. Do you find a rhyme scheme in the poem? The rhyming scheme of the first stanza is A, cloud, and crowd, B, hills, and daffodils, ending with a rhyming couplet C, trees, and breeze. Is the rhyme scheme similar in other three stanzas or do you find any variation? 15. How many times is the word dance repeated in this poem? In which line does it show the happiness and liveliness of the flowers? 16. In which line does it create a sense of harmonious relationship between the daffodils and the waves? 17. In which line does this harmonious relationship include the poet himself? 18. What figures of speech do you find in the poem? 19. Simile is a figure of speech that makes an explicit comparison between two unlike things by using like, us, etc. For example, in I wandered lonely as a cloud, as the loneliness of the poet resembles the loneliness of the cloud that is floating high in the sky, the figure of speech used is a simile. What other example of a simile do you find in the poem? 20. Metaphor is a figure of speech that makes an implicit comparison between two unlike things. In what wealth the show to me had brought, the poet imagines the happiness brought to him by the beautiful scene of the flowers as wealth. Does he use a metaphor here? 21. 10,000 saw I at a glance, is it an exaggeration? Will you call it a hyperbole? 22. What figure of speech does the poet use in They Stretched in Never-Ending Line? The Ballad of Father Gilligan, William Butler Yeats. Introducing the author. William Butler Yeats, 1865-1939, is an Irish poet, dramatist and mystic. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923. Warm-up. The Ballad of Father Gilligan has a ballad form, a narrative poem, usually sung, with regular, short stanzas that tell a story. In this poem, Yeats narrates a profoundly meaningful story and it has a more overtly religious content than most of his poems. The story is about a priest who, being emotionally and physically worn out, fell into deep slumber. As he woke up, he was horrified by the fact that he could not make it to the bedside of the sick man before he died and that no one had performed the rites of blessing for the dying. The divine presence in the guise of the priest is an affirmation of a loving and kind God. Study the poem and find out how Yeats glorifies God. The text. The old priest Peter Gilligan was weary night and day. For half his flock were in their beds, or under green sods lay. 4. Once, while he nodded on a chair, at the moth hour of eve, Another poor man sent for him, and he began to grieve. 8. I have no rest, nor joy, nor peace, for people die and die. And after cried he, God forgive. My body spake, not I. 12. He knelt, and leaning on the chair he prayed and fell asleep. And the moth hour went from the fields, and stars began to peep. 16. They slowly into millions grew, and leaves shook in the wind. And God covered the world with shade, and whispered to mankind. 20. Upon the time of sparrow chirp when the moths came once more, the old priest Peter Gilligan stood upright on the floor. 24. Mavron, Mavron. The man has died while I slept on the chair. He roused his horse out of its sleep, and rode with little care. 28. He rode now as he never rode, by rocky lane and fen. The sick man's wife opened the door. Father, you're come again. 32. And is the poor man dead? He cried. He died an hour ago. The old priest Peter Gilligan, in grief, swayed to and fro. 36. When you were gone, he turned and died as merry as a bird. The old priest Peter Gilligan, he knelt him at that word. 40. He who hath made the night of stars for souls who tire and bleed, sent one of his great angels down to help me in my need. 44. He who is wrapped in purple robes, with planets in his care, had pity on the least of things, asleep upon a chair. 48. Glossary. Priest also called father, a person who performs religious rites of the church. Flock members of his parish locality around the church, they are like the flock of sheep and Father Gilligan, their shepherd. Sods, upper layer of the grasslands, under the sods in grave moth hour of eve, the time just before evening, moths are winged insects. Flying at dawn and dusk, eve, poetic form for evening, mavron, mavron. A cry of grief in Irish, my sorrow, alas. Fen, wet, mass land. Think it out. 1. Why was Father Gilligan weary? Was he only tired physically or also exhausted mentally? Justify your answer with examples from the poem. 2. Why did he seek forgiveness from God? What type of man does this prove him to be? Clue, his two types of devotion. 3. How was the night, peaceful and quiet or turbulent and restless? Bring out expressions from the poem to support your answer. Clue, peep slowly. 4. Why has the night been described so? Clue, contrast between Father Gilligan when awake and when asleep. 5. What was the reaction of Father Gilligan when he woke up from his deep sleep? State why he felt so. 6. Bring out the meaning of the expression, he rode now as he never rode. 7. Find the expressions that show Father Gilligan's concern for the people under his care. Q. At least 4 expressions. 8. Why did the sick man's wife say, Father, you're come again? 9. Who came to the sick man before his death? Why? 10. What made Father Gilligan kneel and pray? 11. What were his words of gratitude to God? 12. There is an implicit comparison between heavenly creatures and bodies, angels, planet etc., and their tireless movement with an insignificant person, Ln. 43. On earth and his inaction, sleep, not being able to take care of people in time. Discuss this comparison. 13. What qualities of Father Gilligan do you admire? 14. Note each stanza has 4 lines. In stanza 1, day, in the first line rhymes with lay, of the fourth line making the rhyme scheme ABCB. Find out whether all the stanzas have the same rhyme scheme. A Psalm of Life. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Introducing the poet. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, 1807-1882, is an American poet and educator. In 1884 he is the first citizen of the United States to be honored in Poets' Corner of Westminster Abbey in London, England. Warm-up. A Psalm of Life is one of the most inspirational poems in literature for the lessons on life which it illustrates. The speaker believes that life is a solemn virtue and that the only way to live it is by making it worthwhile, by becoming a good influence for the future generations, and suggests that as long as one lives, one must progress further than before, and provide impetus for others to create their own footprints. This poem belongs to the genre of poetry called Carpe Diem poems. Carpe diem, popularly translated as seize the day, is a phrase from a Latin poem by Horace. These poems inspire us to make the most of time. Read through the poem and note how the poet urges us not to think that life is sad and purposeless, and how he inspires us to conduct ourselves each day in such a way that we may find ourselves every day better than before, striving hard and leaving the results to God. The text. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers. And things are not what they seem. For life is real. Life is earnest. And the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust thou returnest. Was not spoken of the soul. 8. Not enjoyment, and not sorrow, is our destined end or way, but to act, that each tomorrow finds us farther than today. 12. Art is long, and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still, like muffled drums, are beating. Funeral marches to the grave. 16. In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb, driven cattle. Be a hero in the strife. 20. Trust no future, howe'er pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present. Heart within, and God o'erhead. 24. Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and, departing, leave behind us footprints on the sand of time. 28. Footprints, that perhaps another, sailing o'er life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing, shall take heart again. 32. Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing. Learn to labor and to wait. 36. Glossary. A psalm, a song, hymn, mournful numbers, sorrowful songs. Slumber, sleeps, the soul, if inactive, is dead, earnest, serious. Dust. Returnest, a quotation from the Bible regarding the mortality of the human body, destined, predetermined act to do one's duty, fleeting, passing quickly, art, learning, knowledge. Muffled drums at a funeral, drums are covered with a cloth to deaden the sound and make it more solemn. Bivouac, a temporary camp used by soldiers, a French word. Footprint in the sands of time, great deeds in the history of man. Be not. Strive, do not submit. Fight, sublime, noble. Departing when we die, main ocean. A forlorn and shipwrecked brother, one who has failed in life and is distressed at his own moral and material ruin. Heart for any fate, courage to face any situation. Shall take heart again. Others following us will know that we too have had the experiences and shall overcome hardships. Think it out. 1. Does the title suggest what the poem is about? 2. What does the poet say about life in the first stanza? 3. What does the poet mean by life is real? Life is earnest. 4. What is the poet's observation on soul? 5. Quote the line which means death is not the goal of life. 6. What attitude does the poet challenge in the first two stanzas? Is the attitude the poet positive or negative? 7. Dust thou art, to dust thou returnest. This expression alludes to the Bible. What are the other lines in the poem that make an allusion to the Bible? 8. What does the poet say about the goal of life in stanza 3? 9. What is the poet's observation on art? 10. Be a hero in the strife. Is it an inspiring call of the poet? What other things does the poet urge us to do? 11. Why does the poet prefer the present to past and future? 12. What do the lives of great men remind us? 13. How do the examples of great men help a person in distress? 14. How can we make our life sublime? Last stanza. 15. Do you find each stanza has 4 lines rhyming alternately at the end, and each stanza has a recurrent rhythm pattern: 8 syllables, 7 syllables, 8 syllables, 7 syllables? What is the rhyme scheme of the poem? 16. The poet uses some depressing words as mournful, empty, dead, grave. What other such words does he use in the poem? 17. What is the tone of the poem, inspiring or despairing? 18. Simile is a figure of speech making comparison between two unlike things based on a similarity in one aspect. X. Still, like muffled drums, stanza 4, line 3. What other similes do you find in the poem? 19. Life is but an empty dream. What figure of speech is used here? Quote another line of the same stanza in which this figure of speech is used. Tailpiece. Read the following carpe diem. Oh, gather me the rose. William Ernest Henley, 1874. Oh, gather me the rose, the rose. While yet in flower we find it, for summer smiles, but summer goes. And winter waits behind it. 4. For with the dream forgone, forgone. The deed forborne forever, the worm, regret, will canker on. And time will turn him never. 8. So well it were to love my love. And cheat of any laughter the death beneath us and above. The dark before and after. 12. The myrtle and the rose, the rose. The sunshine and the swallow, the dream that comes, the wish that goes. The memories that follow. 16. Television. Roald Dahl. Introducing the poet. Roald Dahl, 1916-1990, is a British novelist, short story writer, poet, fighter pilot and screenwriter. He has written children's tales, mysteries for adults and witty poetry for all. Warm up. Young children spend a lot of time in screen viewing activities like playing video games and watching movies as well as cartoon pictures. They watch television with fascination, often while snacking, and quickly grow plump. It is a problem many parents struggle with. In this poem, Dahl even suggests that television actually becomes a harmful addiction for children who watch it too much and become hypnotized by that fictional world. Read the poem and note how the poet presents the problems of television addicts. The text. The most important thing we've learned, so far as children are concerned, is never, never, never let them near your television set. Or better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all. In almost every house we've been, we've watched them gaping at the screen. They loll and slop and lounge about. And stare until their eyes pop out. 10. Last week in someone's place we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. They sit and stare and stare and sit until they're hypnotized by it. Until they're absolutely drunk. 15. With all that shocking, ghastly junk. Oh yes, we know it keeps them still. They don't climb out the windowsill. They never fight or kick or punch. They leave you free to cook the lunch. 20. And wash the dishes in the sink. But did you ever stop to think, to wonder just exactly what this does to your beloved toad? It rots the sense in the head. 25. It kills imagination dead. It clogs and clutters up the mind. It makes a child so dull and blind he can no longer understand a fantasy, a fairyland. 30. His brain becomes as soft as cheese. His powers of thinking rust and freeze. He cannot think, he only sees. Glossary. Idiotic thing. A television is called an idiot box, slang term, loll and slop and lounge about, sit or lie leisurely while eating and spilling snacks, hypnotized, charmed, made still as if by a spell, ghastly, horrible, very alarming junk, rubbish, things of little value, toad, child. Clog, block, choke. Clutter to fill with too many things, fantasy, a pleasant imaginary situation, think it out. 1. What important thing does the poet say about children and the television? 2. How do children spend their time with the television? 3. How do children behave while watching TV? 4. How does TV become a harmful addiction for children? 5. Why do parents let their children watch TV? 6. Do you think TV does the role of a babysitter? Justify. 7. What are the undesirable consequences of watching the television? 8. Why does the poet use all capital letters to end his poem? 9. What comparison does he make to prove his point? 10. He cannot think, he only sees. What does he refer to? Money Madness. D.H. Lawrence. Introducing the poet. David Herbert Richards Lawrence, 1885-1930, is an English novelist, poet, playwright, essayist, literary critic, and painter. His collected works represent an extended reflection upon the dehumanizing effects of modernity and industrialization. In them, Lawrence confronts issues relating to emotional health and vitality, spontaneity, and instinct. Warm up. Craze for money seems to have gripped the modern world. In today's world, people need money to have access to things. Without money, they are really lost and don't know what to do. Without money, they may end up on the streets. The rich are, therefore, admired for their wealth and prosperity, and the poor are hated for their poverty and adversity. But money has been the root, if not of all evil, of great misery to the human race. Money turns man insane. Read the poem and note how the poet pleads for a society without money. The text. Money is our madness, our vast collective madness. And of course, if the multitude is mad, the individual carries his own grain of insanity around with him. I doubt if any man living hands out a pound note without a pang, and a real tremor, if he hands out a 10-pound note. 5. We quail, money makes us quail. It has got us down, we grovel before it in strange terror. And no wonder, for money has a fearful cruel power among men. But it is not money we are so terrified of. It is the collective money madness of mankind. 10. For mankind says with one voice, how much is he worth? Has he no money? Then let him eat dirt, and go cold. And if I have no money, they will give me a little bread so I do not die, but they will make me eat dirt with it. I shall have to eat dirt, I shall have to eat dirt. 15. If I have no money, it is that I am frightened of. And that fear can become a delirium. It is fear of my money-mad fellow men. We must have some money to save us from eating dirt. 20. And this is all wrong. Bread should be free, shelter should be free, fire should be free. To all and anybody, all over the world. We must regain our sanity about money. 25. Before we start killing one another about it. It's one thing or the other. Glossary. Insanity, madness. Pang, a sharp, sudden feeling of pain. Quail, feel or show fear. A delirium, wild excitement. Think it out. 1. Are all the people of the world mad for money? Which line implies this? 2. Are all the people equally mad for money, or degree of madness varies from person to person? 3. How does a person feel when he parts with a pound of money? 4. How does a person feel when he hands out a 10-pound note? 5. What kind of feeling does money create in us? Line 6-7. 6. Are we really afraid of money or moneyed men? 7. What do people say about a man's worth? 8. How many times is dirt repeated in the poem? What does the poet mean by dirt? 9. How do money-mad men treat men without money? 10. What does a man without money fear, poverty or dishonor by eating dirt? 11. Why does the poet say we must have some money? 12. What does the poet mean by bread? Line 22, shelter, line 23, fire, line 24. 13. Do you think bread, shelter and fire should be free? Explain why you think so. 14. Why does the poet repeat the words all and anybody in line 24? 15. What does it mean to regain our sanity? Line 25. 16. What are the two things implied in its one thing or the other? Tailpiece. Kill money. Kill money, put money out of existence. It is a perverted instinct, a hidden thought, which rots the brain, the blood, the bones, the stones, the soul. Make up your mind about it. That society must establish itself upon a different principle from the one we have got now. We must have the courage of mutual trust. We must have modesty of simple living. And the individual must have his house, food and fire all free like a bird. Syllabus for higher secondary education in English for +2 Arts, Science and Commerce stream. 2016 admission batch. +2 first year, detailed syllabus, Unit I Prose. I. Standing up for yourself Yevgeny Yevtushenko E. The legend behind a legend Hariharan Balakrishnan E. The Golden Touch Nathaniel Hawthorne IV. In London in -4 Lewis Fisher V. The Cancer Fight, from Hiroshima to Houston Ritsuko Komaki Unit 2 Poetry. I. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening Robert Frosty. Oft. In the stilly night Thomas Moore E. The Inchcape Rock Robert Southey IV. To my true friend Elizabeth Pinard V. Fishing Gopa Ranjan Mishra Unit 3, Non-Detailed Study. I. 3 questions Leo Tolstoy E. After 20 years O. Henry E. The Open Window Saki IV. The Open and Only Houdini Robert Lado V. Childhood Jawaharlal Nehru Y Marriage Drive. Rajendra Prasad Unit IV. Writing Skills. E. Writing a paragraph. E. Developing ideas into paragraphs. E. Writing personal letters and notes. IIV. Writing applications, official letters and business letters. V. Writing telegrams, emails, personal advertisements, and short notices. Y. Using graphics. Unit V. Grammar. E. Countable and uncountable nouns. C. Tense patterns. E. Modal verbs. IIV. Prepositions. V. The Imperatives Book Prescribed, Invitation to English 1, 2, 3 and 4, published by Odisha State Bureau of Textbook Preparation and Production, Bhubaneswar. A. Question pattern and distribution of marks English +2, first years, for college level examination, full mark, 100 time, 3 hours. 1. Reading comprehension. A. Prescribed prose pieces. 5 questions to be answered, each carrying 2 marks, 10 marks. B. Prescribed poems. 5 questions to be answered, each carrying 2 marks, 10 marks. C. Prescribed extensive reading texts. 2 questions to be answered carrying 5 marks each, only global inferential and evaluative questions to be set 10 marks. 2. Reading related skills. A. Vocabulary skills 5 marks. B. Information transfer 5 marks, converting verbal information to non-verbal forms, such as diagrams, charts and tables. C. Reordering, sequencing sentences 5 marks. D. Dictionary, reference skills. 2 marks on using a dictionary, and 3 marks meanings of a word, 5 marks. A. Cohesive devices 5 marks. 3. Writing skills. A. Letter writing, personal, official, commercial, word limit 150, 10 marks. B. Description of object, event, process, word limit 150, 10 marks. C. Slogan, telegram, caption writing, word limit 10, 5 marks. 4. Grammar in context 10 marks. 5. Translation, story developing 10 marks. English. Second year no of period, yearly 80. Unit I Prose. I. My Greatest Olympic Prize Jesse Owens E. On Examinations Winston S. Churchill E. The Portrait of a Lady Khushwant Singh IV. The Magic of Teamwork Sam Pitroda. V. Development of Polio Vaccines Bonnie A.M. O'Conk and Linda Morgenstern Unit 2 Poetry. I. Daffodils William Wordsworth E. The Ballad of Father Gilligan William Butler Yeats E. A Psalm of Life Henry W. Longfellow IV. Television Roald Dahl V. Money Madness D.H. Lawrence Unit 3, Non-Detailed Study. I. The Doctor's Word R.K. Narayan E. The Nightingale and the Rose Oscar Wilde E. Mystery of the Missing Cap Manoj Das IV. The Monkeys Paw W.W. Jacobs V. My Mother Charlie Chaplin Y. Stay Hungry. Stay Fit Steve Jobs Unit IV. Writing Skills. I. Interpreting graph, charts, tables and diagrams etc. Reporting events and business matters e. Note making and summarizing IV. Extended writing. Unit V. Grammar. I. Revision of tense patterns and modal verbs e. Conditionals. E. The passive. IV. Direct and reported speech. V. Interrogatives. Y. Phrasal verbs. Book prescribed Invitation to English 1, 2, 3 and 4, published by Odisha State Bureau of Textbook Preparation and Production, Bhubaneswar. Question pattern and distribution of marks. English plus 2, second year full mark 100 time 3 hours. 1. Reading comprehension. A. Prescribed prose pieces. 5 questions to be answered, each carrying 2 marks 10 marks. B. Prescribed poems. 5 questions to be answered, each carrying 2 marks 10 marks. C. Prescribed extensive reading texts 10 marks. 2 questions to be answered carrying 5 marks each, only global inferential and evaluative questions to be set on a passage of about 250 words. D. Unseen prose passage. 5 questions including inferential ones, carrying 2 marks each 10 marks. 2. Reading related skills. A. Vocabulary skills to be tested on the unseen passage 5 marks. B. Information transfer 70 words 5 marks. Converting non-verbal information into verbal form. C. Dictionary reference skills 5 marks. 3. Writing skills. A. Report writing 200 words 10 marks. B. Guided note making on a given passage 7 marks. C. Summarizing on the same passage 8 marks. D. Essay writing 250 words on given outlines 10 marks. 4. Grammar in context 10 marks.